2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for June 5th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stephen, do you have an announcement?
Yes, Marie, the Tuesday, June 13th, is the annual town election. The ballot has several important questions. One is there is a select board race, although unopposed, as you probably were aware of that. There are 4 candidates vying for 3 school committee seats, and we have the debt exclusion or override vote to fund the DPW project that was approved at town meeting. So I think polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the community house, which is the polling station.
We have 8 to 8.
Oh, 8 to 8, sorry. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. At the community house, which is the only polling location in town. And we hope folks will get out and vote. I saw PJP here. When's the last day for absentee ballots? Is anybody?
Thursday, Friday.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we still can get absentee ballots. Absentee ballots are still available if people want to vote absentee. They're not going to be around. And then the other thing is, and I posted something on town's Facebook page about this. I know it's like perfect grass growing weather right now between the rain and the cool and then occasional sunshine. And we've gotten a lot of complaints about lawns being overgrown, and Paul Healy, our building commissioner, is the one that responds to those. And I know he's in between inspecting people's, construction projects. He's trying to get around and leave notes or send letters to folks. But I guess I would just appeal for patience, both with us, with Paul, and with your neighbors, because I know, at least for my sake, I went out of town for a weekend and got back, and it was much longer than I normally leave it. And so part of it's Mother Nature working against us. So if you do have a neighbor who just is not attentive to it, certainly let us know. But if it's just a thing where they didn't get to it before they went away for a few days, try and be patient.
Okay. Thank you. I do have one announcement. I received word Senator Lesser is having a first annual Thrive After 55 wellness fair that is being hosted on Friday, June 9th at the Rivers Auditorium at Western New England University from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a wellness fair. They're going to have 40 participating organizations. This event is free and open to the public. And we'll give you an opportunity to speak to the senator as well as learn a little information of what's available in the area. Wanted to move on to select board comments. Mark?
Yeah, I do. At I think the last meeting or the meeting before that, we were talking about, and Tom, we were specifically talking about how nice it would be to put a covered bus stop covering in front of the 471 Long Meadow Street, where we were talking about having a change in the parking lot. Well, it's interesting because the PVTA is now proposed to eliminate the bus going down Route 5. And my announcement is that if people are interested in maintaining it, they have one chance and one chance only. Actually, I guess it's 2 chances. On June 22nd from 4 to 5 p.m. and again from 6 to 7 p.m. there will be a public hearing at Bay Path University Wright Hall. Wright Hall at Bay Path University, June 22nd, 4 to 5 and 6 to 7. This is part of a proposed cut of 22 routes in the PVTA service. That's a response to a reduction in funding. The PVTA's got about a $1.7 million shortfall in their budget, and it's called the G5 route in Longmeadow. That's on the cutting block. It was originally designed to be at Bay Path University because Bay Path students are perceived to be the users of the bus, but they won't be in session. And so my fear is that if nobody goes there, they'll say, see, we told you we don't need the bus. It's the only bus in Longmeadow beyond the one that goes down Converse Street to the Jewish nursing home, to the Jewish life care. So I would encourage people to make their feelings known about the PVTA bus on June 22nd, 4 to 5 p.m. and 6 to 7 p.m., Bay Path University, Wright Hall. Thank you.
Any other select board comments? No. I just wanted to emphasize what the town manager said. A lot of people don't realize that there's a ballot initiative on for the DPW. They said, oh, it passed a town meeting. It did pass a town meeting, but if you don't go out and you vote for it on June 13th, we're going to be back to square one on the whole project. So please get out and vote. It's a very important day. And I know there's often a lot of people that don't go to the local town elections, especially since there's so few seats that are coming up. But this is a very important issue, as well as the school committee and the other offices that are up. So please get out and vote on June 13th. All right, resident comments?
Thank you. I will try and make the June 22nd meeting for Bay Path, because I know a number of people on the Bay Path, on the PVTA bus who use it and come into Long Meadow, so thank you for that information. Anyway, good evening. My name is Andrea Chasin. I live at 236 Crestview Circle, Long Meadow, and I'm here with David Miller.
68 East Greenwich Road, Long Meadow.
And we're here as representatives of a group called Long Meadow Environmental Transitions, and we have put before you a proposal for a non-binding resolution that we would like the Select Board to consider fully at the June 19th meeting, asking you to support two bills that are currently before the House and Senate on carbon pricing, and I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview about this. First of all, Transitions is a group that started about 10 years ago, or 8 years ago rather, to look at how to become a catalyst to help Long Meadow move from fossil fuel-based to more sustainability, and as part of that, we were instrumental in putting together the Green Communities program that Long Meadow is now a part of. And in 2007, this Select Board passed a resolution supporting a climate action plan for the overall town to support the work going on with the Global Warming Solutions Act, as well as the Green Communities Act. So in your packet, I have put forward a draft of a resolution in support of the carbon pricing bills that are currently before the state legislature. A copy of all of the people who've signed the petition, well over 100 residents of Long Meadow have done so, as well as a copy of the 2007 resolution for developing a local climate action plan and the supporting legislation that we're asking you to take a look at, as well as some information from the Yale program on climate change communication that shows that, and has done this throughout the country, and looks at different responses to climate action or to climate issues and proposed policy decisions. And in Hampden County alone, more than 78% of the community in Hampden County, which of course we're part of, it doesn't localize to the individual towns, support policies to regulate CO2 as a greenhouse gas. So I've given you all of this information so that you can consider it for the June 19th meeting, and that's what I'm asking you to consider, is to put this on the agenda so that we can come and fully provide some more information to you. We're asking that Long Meadow be one of an existing 8 communities in the Pioneer Valley that have already passed non-binding resolutions in support of this. The hearing on the two bills is June 20th, and a number of us are going to be going down to both testify and support the bills. With me today, in addition to Dave, are 4 other members of the Long Meadow Transitions Group. So we are all very much active in this work and ask you to consider this for your June 19th Select Board meeting. Anything else you want to add?
No, very well.
Okay.
Any questions?
No?
Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.
Okay, and we'll get on the agenda for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other resident comments?
Richard Elias, 608 Frank Smith Road. Mr. Crane, members of the Select Board. Last week, I participated in a function over at the Senior Center. It's functional over there, but what I found coming into the area, the main entrance to the thing, which I don't think I've ever seen it during the day, you've got a beautiful, functional ramp for wheelchairs to get into the building. From the back of the building, where they've got a couple of handicap parking spaces, there's a nice little berm that allows the wheelchairs to go in. But if you go towards the horseshoe part of that, you'll find that there's a 3 to 4 inch curbing there. And I think if the would be possible, it would be nice if the DPW could put a little berm in the front, because people have to go all the way down and around. Just a thought. And I think with the equipment that we have for doing the potholes and everything, it really wouldn't be any real cost or anything like that for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other resident comments? All right, Dr. Metz?
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mr. Crane. I wanted to first thank you guys very much for letting me kind of get cut out of turn because I have another obligation at 7 or 8. Thank you.
You want to tell us your address and what
Oh,
you're
I'm sorry.
applying for?
Stephen Metz, 171 Coventry Lane, Long Meadow.
And you're applying for
Right.
Capital Planning
Capital
Committee,
Planning.
the 3-year term.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the 3-year terms expiring. And why are you doing this again?
I can answer that one way, but I've enjoyed being on the committee. I've enjoyed kind of helping everybody understand how the process works and organizing the I see ourselves as representatives of you to help understand what the capital request of the executive is, and provide what is basically citizens' comments on some of the things that are being requested. As Mr. Gold knows, I've been on the committee since about halfway through his next to last term, so I was well trained.
Any questions for Dr. Metz? No? All right. Thank you very much for coming in and for all your years of volunteering. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Katie Petrakis. And you're here to interview for the audit committee. And
Yes.
are you going for the 1-year term, the 3-year, or the 3-year term?
I believe the 3-year term.
3-year term. Okay. And you are an incumbent.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for volunteering again.
You're welcome.
And you want to tell us why do you want to do, or what do you think about the audit committee? How has it been going?
So I just joined in March, so I've only been to about a handful of meetings.
Oh, okay.
But I think, as you'll find out later, we're in the process of retaining a new audit firm. So I think with my background working in a public accounting firm, that I would be a good asset to the audit committee. And so I'd just like to volunteer my time.
Thank you. Any questions for her? Mark?
Yeah, pardon my bluntness. What's going on? What was going on with the audit, the auditor? I mean, that kind of came out of the blue. For people at home who don't know, our town auditor, we thought we had a 3-year contract with, left us after 2 years, and now well, I think the audit committee's done a good job to find another auditor. But what can you give us a?
You know, the first meeting I attended was the meeting where it was up in the air whether we were going to continue with the previous audit firm. I know there was some disagreements back and forth between, Paul and the auditors in terms of some extra billing, and we just didn't necessarily think that it was fair. So I'm sure some people that have been on there longer might have a little bit more information.
Okay.
Maybe Pete.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, let's just finish the interviews before we jump into the audit.
I was trying to
Thing.
answer that question.
Yeah, we'll be doing the audit later.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, though, Pete.
Just,
Do you have a question for her?
well, just a question. So you've had a few meetings to get a feel for it. Is there anything that you see in the next, year, couple of years that would be something you'd want to make some changes or make improvements? Is there anything we?
I know, from what I understand, the audit committee, since it was created 10 years ago, has, every year done more and more and more to try to, it's unusual that Long Meadow has an audit committee.
Yeah.
And, really to kind of to protect the citizens of the town. I think that, hopefully that this next audit firm that comes on board, they seem very knowledgeable in terms of government bodies, entities. So I hope that, they can really identify any type of gaps in our, best practices, I guess you could say. In terms of anything additional, I mean, as far as what I can see, the whole group is very engaged and always wanting to take on more. So there's not necessarily anything I would change. Maybe, maybe try to get more people on, because I know a lot of the people on the current audit committee have been on there for quite a while. So I think it might be good to kind of get new blood in, which is me. But I know we have some openings as well. So.
Well, that's a good advertisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
Michelle? And Michelle is going for the Building Demolition Committee, the 3-year term.
Yes.
And your address?
35 Warwick Street.
Okay. And is this your first time on this one committee?
No, it would be my first time as a member at large, but I was on
Okay.
as a historical commission representative.
That's what I thought, but it didn't say incumbent.
Oh, it didn't. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was off for a little while, so now I'm coming back on. But yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for volunteering again.
Yes. Thank
Any
you.
questions for her in regards to the committee? No?
Did the committee meet in the past year? Has there been a reason for them?
They're supposed to meet annually, but I've been off for 2 years at this point, so I'm not sure if a meeting occurred or not. That's one reason why I'm wanting to make sure that, I was sort of the meeting person to make sure everything came together, so I'm hoping to
Well, welcome
get
back.
back on track, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for volunteering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Peg Landon? Oh, there you are. And Peg is incumbent on the Cultural Council and is going for the 3-year term.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Peg Landon. I live at 5 Meadowbrook Road in our town. And I am asking to be reappointed for another 3-year term to a group that I've enjoyed working with. And I feel we provide cultural enrichment to our community. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Cultural Council, we review and award grants submitted by artists, performers, nonprofit organizations, and artisans. And we are sure that they will take place in the town of Long Meadow, and most of them are free of charge. And they are well attended. One of our priorities is try to meet the needs of all ages, from the over 60 club to the little ones in the library. And I would like to be on the council for 3 more years. And one other thing, we had requests of $10,000 this year. We were only able to fund $5,240. 4,800 came from the Mass Cultural Council, and 827 came from the town of Long Meadow, for which we are grateful. But while I am sitting before you, I'm going to ask you, you might consider increasing our subsidy from the town to the Cultural Council in the future, maybe doubling it. Anyway, that's my request tonight.
Well, actually, I think there was some discussion of that a couple of meetings ago.
Right.
So we are going to look into that. Mhm. Any questions?
Any questions?
for her? No?
Well, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, how many people are on the council?
Our council, we have 8 members. Our chair is Bill Egan, Jean Maziar, librarian, Elizabeth Woods, Evie Woods, the artist, Andrea Carey, and James Cass, myself, Peter Thompson, and Trudy Epstein. And we meet once a month. However, from when the grants come in October, they have to be awarded by January. We may meet more often, depending on how much work there is to be done.
Well, I would just say, you know, and I lived in Springfield, the Cultural Council had set up a songwriters class at one of the libraries, and it was really a nice thing to do, you know. But I guess you just have to wait and see whichever grant, whatever people put into.
Exactly, Tom.
To do,
Yes,
yeah.
we are we hope to receive grants, especially unusual ones that we hope to fund. But we do get some of the Nova Cantori group, for instance, that recently performed at St. Andrews, a marvelous, marvelous cultural event. The Chamber Music Society, we always give give money to. And then a lot of library programs for the children, reading, a juggling event. We're pretty diverse.
Okay.
Sounds wonderful.
Thanks. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
coming
very
in.
much.
Kathy Keitzman, and you're interviewing for the Historic District Commission, and are you looking for a 3-year term?
Yes,
Okay. And your address?
891 Long Meadow Street.
And you've been on it. You're an incumbent.
I am, yes.
Mhm.
And I'm currently serving as the clerk for the Historic District
Oh,
Commission.
thank you. Any questions for her?
Do you live in, is your house in the historic district?
Yes, I live in the
Okay.
district.
So
I'm one
you-
of
you
2
have-
people on the
You have
commission
skin
who
in the
live
game, as it's
district.
called?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
You need more members.
We do need more members, yes.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. When we finish all the interviews, we'll be voting.
Okay, great.
In a couple of meetings.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I skipped Beth Green. And she's an incumbent on Community Preservation Committee.
34 Ellington Street.
Thank you. And thank you for volunteering again. Are you enjoying it?
I love being on this committee. It's a very, very good group of people. They work well together. Everybody takes their responsibilities seriously. They're very serious about reviewing the grants. They think of good questions so that we really are I think it's a very thoughtful group. So it's very satisfying.
Wonderful. Any questions?
Beth, how do you balance the issue of public funds for private organizations? You know, we've had CPA money go toward the graveyard that's really a private graveyard as opposed to public buildings. How do you balance that, and what are your thoughts about that?
There are 2 things I would say. First of all, the legislation is such that it's for public, nonprofit, or private individuals can all apply. So we have to consider any application that comes in on the merit of the application itself. So we look at also how many grants have come in from the town specifically, and always have a discussion about what is a reasonable number of grants that the town can actually manage in any particular year, given that some are huge. So you take, for example, the tennis courts, which was a huge project, or redoing the library, or, you start add them up, and if there are 14 applications from the town, it's clear that they can't all be managed. So we really try to work with whoever the applicants are from the town to set good priorities for what makes sense. So we meet with Steve Crane, we meet with the DPW, and we meet with other people, the Finance Committee we've met with, just to say, okay, what makes the most sense? What are the top priorities for the town this year? What are the things that maybe we could wait on? So we're looking at that, and then we still have additional funds. We want to use our funds and allocate them well. So if we are spending, let's say, $500,000 in any particular year, and $300,000 is going to go to DPW, we still have remaining funds. The other thing that's important to remember is that of our funds, 10% must be used for historic preservation, 10% must be used for housing, low-income housing, and if we don't spend it, it stays in the kitty for both of those, as well as land conservation. So again, we have to keep some money in the kitty for land conservation.
I just, you've been on the board how long?
6 years.
6?
6 years I've been
Oh, good.
on, and
So
I'm
what
the
would you
clerk.
say are like some of the top things you've been involved in that you feel really good that you were a part of the vote to fund?
I think one is that there's been a big change in the last few years that we can actually put some money into recreation, which before we were not allowed to do. So that's been a big shift in what we were allowed, which allowed us to do things more like, we put some money into the schools for the playgrounds and some of that. I really like some of the historic preservation projects, which are not something that were my particular area of expertise, but I think are very interesting. We've given a lot of money for historic preservation of buildings through the Historic Society. So like the Stores House and the library and some of the historic buildings in town. I find those interesting, and the historic records are very interesting to see the restoration on those. So that's satisfying. I also really like that we've been able to put some money into some of the recreation, the sports things, like some of the fields that we've been helping to redo. Some of the fields in town which are expensive to do some of the projects, but we've made it possible for that to happen. And things like, when you talk about the tombstones, which we contributed, people think of that particular cemetery as being part of the town. They have no idea it's a separate 501c3. So the one right behind First Church is actually a private, but people come to town and look at those, and it is a part of our history. Those are the early people who lived here. So it seems appropriate that be well kept.
Yeah, great. I want to make a joke, say the dead center of town, but I won't say it.
Yeah, we get those.
Yeah, Beth, also I asked somebody else the same question, but one of the areas that concern me, and so I'd like to get your take on it, is projects that end up through no fault of the community preservation of ending up being funded over multiple years because the first appropriation turns out to be insufficient, the second appropriation's insufficient, sometimes the third and the fourth aren't sufficient, and we continue to kind of, we've already got $40,000 into this project, we'll put in another 10, or we've already got, and I'll use as an example the Blinn tennis courts that kind of rolled up. We've had a couple others. At what point does the community preservation say, yeah, we'll keep putting money into this over multiple years, or is there a philosophy about multiple year funding?
I am going to have to ask you to make a 2-minute answer.
I will try really hard to limit this,
Thank
because I know
you.
you have other people. Number one, I don't think we've ever had one that went 4 or 5 years. The Blinn Tennis Court was a major exception, and some of that had to do within the last few years. The few that have been like that have been predominantly because the town did not have a good estimate when they came to us in the first place, and that has been rectified. Mr. Mazza has made a major effort for that not to be the case. He's been very responsible, and in fact, there was one where the estimate was so ridiculous that he came back and asked to have that project withdrawn. We can't take money from somebody once it's actually been allocated. So if we give you $40,000 and then you come back and say, well, it's actually $80,000, we have serious conversation about, do we want to put any more money into it, or just say, we're not willing to put any more money into it, you find some other source of funding, or give us the money back. So we have those conversations. But I think Blinn is the most glaring of that. And then, yeah, I think that's the most glaring.
You did it. Thank you very much. We have to, unfortunately, open into a liquor license hearing at 7:30. That's why I had to rush you to get, so we would open on time, and you did it perfectly. So thank you very much for coming in. And I have a few more interviews. As soon as we finish the hearing, we will jump immediately into the next interviews and try to get them going. So liquor license here, is there a motion to open the hearing?
I move we open the hearing for the WH Kitchen liquor license.
And so please come in front. Thank you. Hello.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And I had trouble with my computer. Am I supposed to swear in anybody for a liquor license? I'm not supposed to. Okay. you want to tell us a little bit about your application?
Sure. My name is David Crevier. I represent the Long Meadow Kitchen, Inc. My law firm is Crevier and Ryan in Springfield, Massachusetts. The Long Meadow Kitchen, Inc. has applied for a restaurant pouring license for all alcoholic beverages. The sole shareholder of the Long Meadow Kitchen is Mr. Barquette, former selectman. He's a longtime resident of Long Meadow. He's lived here since 1997 with his family. He has 2 children, both of them graduated from the high school. His son, 20, and his daughter, 17, who's graduating this coming week. As you all know, he was a former selectman in town, on the school committee, and a longtime member of the school building committee. He participates in a ton of charitable works. He sponsors the Long Meadow Pancake Breakfast at the community house just before Long Meadow Days. Mr. Barquette and the Long Meadow Kitchen is in the position that a lot of small restaurants are in now. You need a liquor license to survive in today's environment. As you guys know, there's lots of restaurants that are closing all over the place. And we believe this is appropriate use for the Long Meadow Kitchen. As you also may know, there are 3 restaurants in Long Meadow shops that have liquor licenses. Bertucci's, Max Burger, and Umi. Those are all immediately adjacent to the high school baseball field. Mr. Barquette will be changing his hours slightly, but the plan is to have closing hours on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 11 p.m., not very late at night. Sunday, the restaurant will close at 8 p.m., and Monday and Wednesday at 9, which is unchanged from current hours. It will be closed on Tuesday. The only persons who will be serving alcohol at the kitchen are persons who will be tip trained, as you know. A number of his employees have already been tip trained. The remainder are going to be tip trained this weekend. The alcohol that will be served in the kitchen will only be served to persons seated at the counter and seated in the restaurant. There's going to be no walk-up service to the counter, so no one's going to be able to walk in, buy alcohol for someone who's not there. So it'll only be served to people who are sitting there. Mr. Barquette has rearranged the back portion of the restaurant. He's put in closed-circuit television so he can see the section of the back of the restaurant where the alcohol is actually going to be dispensed from. It's a very small section right in the back. There is a locker back there with a lock on it, which actually has a sensor on the lock. If anyone goes into that locker, Mr. Barquette gets a text telling them that someone's gone into the liquor locker. It's as safe as it can be. None of the alcohol will be visible to the public. If you walk in, it's not going to be behind the counter. Alcohol will be served at the counter and in the restaurant, but there's not going to be a bar there. All the alcohol will be behind in the back of the kitchen. So no one will just walk in and see a bar. As you also may know, there's a liquor store, Four Seasons Wine and Liquor, which is immediately next door to Mr. Barquette's restaurant. And Mr. Barquette looks forward to doing this and continuing his good service to the town.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, would this be a license that would just be beer and wine, or would it be more than that? Would be a full
all alcoholic beverages.
All alcoholic beverages. And you feel, because when you think about, sort of hamburgers and hot dogs and, pizza stuff, I don't think about Manhattans, those kinds of things. So I'm wondering, I don't know, it just makes a difference. Yeah.
I'm just curious, are you intending to be able to serve at any time you're open? I mean, not that somebody's going to be in there at 7 o'clock, but isn't there a state law about Sundays? Can't serve before 10? Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
I really don't know.
He intends to comply with all state laws.
Yeah.
And as I said, the hours that he intends to keep in the evening are much shorter than many other places that serve alcohol. Friday, Saturday, and Thursday closing at 11 p.m., Monday and Wednesday at 9, and Sunday at 8 p.m.
Mark?
Yeah, the information that we got noted that there are hours that are by statute that we cannot control, but there are other hours that we can, and I think Mr. Lowe kind of alluded to some of those as I'll call the early morning hours, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Would that be problematic if that were to be limited from the liquor license or allowance that we provided?
I can answer that.
I think that it would be. I have to comply with those of the Commonwealth, which does have a restriction as the beginning of service on a Sunday. However, on a Saturday, it does not. And I open at 7 o'clock on a Saturday. Although I don't believe too many people are going to be asking for Bloody Marys at 7 o'clock in the morning. Most likely, it's usually 9, 10, 11 o'clock is about when that starts.
Any other questions about the application? No? All right. Anything else you wanted to add before we close the hearing? No?
Well, our menu's more extensive than hamburgers and hot dogs. We have dinner specials, and we have all kinds of things that would match up very nicely to a full liquor license. In addition, there's in town, all of the restaurants that have them now are full liquor licenses.
Okay.
So in a competitive spirit, I'd want to be no parity between all of them.
In comparison
As
to
you know,
all the other restaurants.
The Hokie Law was within that block, had a liquor license for many years.
Right.
In the long.
Right, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And it's a matter of survival. I mean, you notice all the friendly stores that are closing, they serve hamburgers, and Pizzeria Uno doesn't. And in today's environment, you can see all these restaurant chains that are closing all over the place. And Mr. Barquette is trying to run a good business. He does a lot of good things for the town of Long Meadow, and appreciate the endorsement.
All right.
I just received information now on the, a pouring license can open Sunday at noon, it says. Exceptions to this is if the local licensing authority accepts a certain state law, they may authorize a restaurant, hotel, or club to open as early as 10 on a Sunday. And then Massachusetts state law says restaurants cannot be barred from serving alcohol between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m., but we could extend the hours between 8 a.m. or 11 a.m. It's our choice if we want to extend that, and I guess that would be, you open every day around...
I'm closed Tuesdays. I open every other day at 7 o'clock in the morning.
7 o'clock in the morning. So we do have, I guess we have three options we can make. One is the liquor license question. The second is if we're going to grant extended hours for serving alcohol, the hours between 8 and 11, we can decide on that. And then Sunday hours start at noon unless we vote to allow a 10 a.m. So I guess those are three different decisions that this board can make. Was your reading of it, Debbie?
Yeah. I
Okay.
thought on Sunday, Governor Baker passed a bill that said they could open at 10. I don't know if that's just an automatic at 10.
No, it says acceptance of this is if a local licensing authority accepts the state law. So we got to accept the state law for a Sunday at 10. And what are you requesting on those three things? You're requesting the liquor license.
That's correct.
And are you requesting to serve before 11 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay. So you're requesting extended hours on the weekdays and Saturdays, and you're also requesting a Sunday 10 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Marie, the question is, do any of the other liquor licenses we have in town have early openings or early serving times?
I don't think Max's Burger opens till 10.
10. I think they're open at 10.
But they might be...
Do they have an extended license to allow them to?
We never voted in the extended, they never requested an extended license. They might be...
It'd be interesting to see how many restaurants are actually open for breakfast.
Yeah, we'd be the only one open for breakfast.
But the issue
He's
is
thinking of
before 11
Max's.
a.m.
Yeah.
I'm just, and I understand, the request was parity, and I buy into that. I think that's clearly acceptable, but what I hate to see is a parade of permit holders coming in here saying, well, we all want to start earlier and earlier and earlier, and I've expressed concern before, and Mr. Crevier, you've noted that it's, within walking distance of the high school, and in fact, I will state I was on record as having voted against the liquor license for Umi Restaurant because it was, at that time, I thought one too many. Now that, Hokie Lau is closed, I'm likely to support this, and I'm not looking too forward to whoever goes into the Hokie Lau if it's a restaurant looking for a liquor license. But, if we're looking for parity, you know, we're potentially going to end up with a whole bunch of people coming here saying, well, I'd like to open at 10, and I'd like to start serving at 10, and I'd like to start serving at 10. And we've got to be prepared to do that in an area within walking distance of our high school.
So,
And I see nothing wrong with the opening, you know, that's why I asked the question. The 11 a.m. is the standard time, and I thought that was probably appropriate.
I think that, in terms of the parity, I think it's unlikely that the other places are going to shift and want to serve breakfast at Bertucci's or Umi's. I don't know. I can't see Umi's or even Max Burger. But they serve liquor when they're open. I mean, when they're open, and they're open later than Mr. Barquette proposed to be open. And so he asked for the opportunity to serve alcohol throughout the period of time that he's open. He works there 70 hours a week or more. He's there, and my wife comments every time I go in, he's there whenever we're there. And he will be there for many hours, and I can't imagine that it's going to be an issue with kids coming over.
Yeah, no, my bigger issue is, again, we go back to some of the other license holders in the area. You know, I don't recall us approving a license beyond the state allowance, which is, you know, 11 a.m. And if they're serving before 11 a.m., they're potentially in violation of the local control.
We'll have to check that and see what Maxis is
Right.
doing.
Well, and we ought to find out. Now, if they want to come in here and say, we want an extension earlier than the state minimum allowance, that's okay. But, you know, I would say that, you know, nobody else has asked for that opportunity that I know of.
I think Max's hours are 11:30 to 10:30 p.m.
Oh, 11:30.
11:30.
Okay, yeah, because I've been in there at 10, but they must not have been
I think
serving.
it's-
So my question is this, you're looking for, according to this, the extended hours begin at 8. So your request is for a weekday to begin at 8, even though you open at 7. The earliest, according to this, you could start serving would be 8. And the Sunday, you're requesting the 10 o'clock.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for them before we close for deliberations? Now, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so now we're going to start our votes. The first vote we have up is I'm looking for a motion to approve the liquor license for White Kitchen?
The Long Meadow Kitchen Incorporated.
Long Meadow Kitchen
Doing business
Incorporated.
as the kitchen.
Yes, Mr. Gold, it was the White Hut Kitchen, and the name was officially changed with the Secretary of State, so.
Long Meadow Kitchen Incorporated.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, I'll second it for discussion. All right, and what is the discussion for the liquor license in general?
I would make a motion to grant both extended hours.
Well, no, we're going to start with just one vote. Let's get the liquor
We wanna do
license.
both.
Huh? Okay. So, what do people feel about granting them a liquor license?
I have no objection to granting
Yeah, I just think, I appreciate the fact they're going to keep it, so when you walk in, you won't see a full bar, you know. But I guess I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was just a beer and wine license, but, because I don't know how, I don't know. I just think we're just, how many, well, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm not exactly sure how many liquor licenses we can grant in this town.
We still have a
And
few
how many
left.
we should have, and how many we should have all in one area, and what that starts to create is a situation where people will go from basically one drinking establishment to the next drinking establishment to the next drinking establishment. Now, we all have, we don't have any bars, right? We just have restaurants that serve.
No, that's not
But
true.
it's pretty close.
That's not true. We have two establishments that have, you can go and sit at the bar and just order drinks. And the Hukilau had been one, but at both Umi and at Max's, you can just go sit at the bar and order drinks. And he's saying that's not going to be at that establishment. But we do have two places that you
I
can
think
do that.
Bertucci's too.
Yeah.
And Bertucci's you can't do, right.
And Bertucci's has a bar also?
Yeah. Right.
Right. So this will be a non-bar establishment. It'll be you'll have to sit, but, I still, not that comfortable with it, so.
I'm very impressed with the security in the back and the cameras and the locks and that high tech to know when someone's opened up that safe or that secure area. I think that's really good. I wish we heard more of our other establishments doing that. So I think that's a nice addition. Any other comments in regards to
No,
this vote?
I'll just say, it's obvious that Mr. Barquette's been on this side of the table. I think Mr. Crevier, you came in with all the right words and all the, tips training and who's going to be there and only people who are going to serve, and those are all the, you knew what at least I was listening to.
I did.
For, so.
And he knows what the police will be doing, too.
I did.
All right, ready for a vote? All those in favor of the liquor license? Okay, so let's move on to the vote for the Sunday. Extended hours starting at 10 o'clock, so people can have the mimosas or the Bloody Marys with their Sunday breakfast. Is there a motion to approve the Sunday extended hours?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? No? All those in favor? Okay, so Sunday extended hours. Now we're talking about extended hours on the weekdays and on Saturday. And the extended hours begin, normal hours start at 11 o'clock, and they're looking for beginning at 8 o'clock. That's the earliest the state allows. Is there a motion to approve the extended hours beginning at 8 o'clock?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, I'll second it for discussion. Discussion on extending hours early in the morning, and that would be included Saturdays.
Yeah, I can see doing it for some days. I can see 10 a.m., but I just don't see 8 a.m.
Okay, so you have trouble with the 8 a.m. number?
I can see at 10 a.m.
Did you want
6 days a
to,
week, but
did you
well,
want to amend the 8 a.m., to amend the motion to go to 10 a.m.?
I'll be glad to amend the motion to 10 a.m. start. Yep.
Okay, how do you feel about it, Tom?
Well, my only concern is, that is really early in the morning to have a place in our town that serves alcohol. And it isn't like we have a large factory in our town that people would get out at, 8 in the morning and be looking for a place to get a drink because they've just been working all night. But there are, within 5-minute drive, there are places that would fit that description, and that would be my concern, that it's more than just, people going for breakfast and having a mimosa, but it's people who are, have a drinking problem who are then coming in at 8 in the morning to a new watering hole, so to speak, even though they're going to order dinner or order food. I mean, that's my concern. I just don't think it fits.
I forgot to get the second on his amendment. Is there a second to his amendment to go to 10 o'clock? All right,
Okay.
I'll move for his amendment to keep it going. Any further discussion on starting the liquor license at 10? I'm sorry, is that what you said? 10 o'clock was the
Yes.
amendment? Okay. And which means it's basically giving them an extra hour in the morning. Okay,
Well, I just think that then the other clubs are starting at 11:30, or the other establishments start serving at 11:30?
11.
They're serving at 11.
But actually, they're not opening till 11:30. I don't know of anyone who opens that early. Everyone's opening at 11:30.
If I could just make more of an observation, I'm not a commissioner, but if I could just offer 2 cents, I think from what I'm hearing from Bobby's perspective, which the one thing I can kind of connect with mentally is that there's not a restaurant that I've been to in this community where I've gone in and ordered food and then ordered a drink and then said, well, you can have the food but not the drink until later.
Right.
I mean, everyone gets to offer the full array of offerings, whether it's liquid or food, for the entire duration that they're open, and that's what I heard from him. And I think that, and that's what I hear as the justification for an 8 a.m. start. I mean, Tom, your concerns are well founded. I mean, I think, but to say, geez, we'll go out to breakfast and everyone knows he can make you a Bloody Mary or a Bellini or something like that, but then they get there at 9 o'clock for breakfast and they're told, no, you have to come back in an hour. I just think that's it's a disadvantage compared to the other restaurants in the community. The problems that could come along with that, I can certainly visualize. But I think if we're just separating that from when he was talking about parity, that wouldn't be parity with the other restaurants. That's
Stephen, there are no other restaurants who have the authority to serve liquor before 11 o'clock. So the parity is, in fact, we're going beyond, my proposal is to go beyond parity by allowing them to serve starting at 10.
But the duration of time for a day that they're serving liquor is probably going to be the same duration. So if they're serving liquor from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. or midnight, that's still 11 or 12 hours. And if he's open, that same 11 or 12-hour stretch starts earlier in the day. I guess it's just, I don't know which way to go with it, but I just think that if he's looking for competitive parity.
Okay, so we have the motion for the amendment. Any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment starting at 10 o'clock? Okay, it failed. All right, now let's go.
You got to ask for the.
Oh, who's this again?
Because it could pass 2 to 1 to 1. It could
Okay.
pass.
All right, so who's against it? Okay, so it's tied. So let's go back to the regular motion that allowing him the extended hours. Any further discussion on the non-amended motion? All those in favor? All those against? Okay. All right, so you can bring that up to us at our next meeting, and we will put on another liquor license because we could not make a decision on that when we have a full board.
So the decision is?
We can't extend your hours. You have a liquor license. You're allowed to start at 10 o'clock. We needed to be able to accept the
I'm allowed
we
to
had to
start at
grant you
10
the
on
extended
Sunday.
hours.
You got the
Sunday, you got 10. On every other day, you have to start at 11. So to get the earlier hours, you'd have to come back and request another liquor license hearing, I think, to be able to get a full board.
Just as a matter of procedure, you have them open a motion, then you do the amendment, and then you rule on the amendment, and then the motion.
Yeah.
Could you put the amendment back up? Because Mr. Lowe was in favor of allowing to open at 8, and then voted
No,
against.
you can't direct us what to
Oh,
do.
no, I'm just asking whether you could. I'm not telling you to. I'm
Yeah,
asking
you're
you.
just, he's
And
just,
that's why he should have voted that way, but he didn't, so
Right.
it's unfortunate.
But the discussion on this is done unless there's another movement.
All right.
unless there's another motion or a
Okay.
motion to close the hearing. Is there another motion on the floor? Stephen?
No, it's fine, sorry. No.
Okay. Is there another motion on the floor to?
Fine, I'll repeat my motion, that I move that we allow a 10 a.m. opening Tuesday through Monday.
I second.
Wednesday through Monday, you're closed on Tuesdays.
Well, hold it, no, it has to be Monday.
Wednesday through
Starting at what
Monday.
time?
Starting 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor? Okay. We have extended hours on every day.
One opposed.
Oh, who's opposed? And we have extended hours on every day, starting at 10 o'clock. So there's uniformity there. Is there a motion to close? The hearing's already been closed, so we've got all 3 votes. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Just one
before
other
we
thing.
finish?
The chapters 138, section 16C requires we make a determination in writing that the premises are not detrimental to an educational activity because of the proximity of the school. So we ask that you do that you make such a finding.
Oh, we've never done that before. And what is that statute?
Chapter 138, section 16C.
Chapter 128, section...
138, 16C.
16C. We should probably put that in our future hearings, too. And when they're how close to the school?
500 feet of school.
And we are 500 feet? Because the tennis courts are there.
I don't think the establishment is. I think the property
sorry, then I wanna
by the
make sure.
landlord, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that if you count the parking lot to the football field.
To the edge.
Okay.
I see.
Right, I think it's edge of property to edge of property as opposed to your building to the
My
school building.
front door to the school front door building.
And so we have to have a written finding. There is no detriment.
That they are not detrimental to the educational activities of the school.
If we want to, I don't know, you said it needs to be a written determination?
That's what the statute says.
So-
We had to, we put a special, we had to give special notice to the school of this meeting, which we did provide as required by the statute.
So what I'm thinking is, as an option, the board could make that that finding here and vote for it. Debbie can generate a document that says that with the signature lines, and if you stop by the office, you can sign it, or we can just bring it back on the 19th and have everybody sign it. And then provide a copy of that to the applicant.
Okay, so is there a motion on the floor for the finding that the activities at Long Meadow Kitchen, Inc. will not be detrimental to the educational activities of the school?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, I'll second it to keep it moving.
I'm not sure what's it's all about.
Huh?
I'm not sure what that's all about. I don't, because I didn't see the statute.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I'm not sure, I have no idea what the word detrimental means. And I guess it means something to somebody, each person who reads it, unless the statute has definitions of the word detrimental. And they've got the statute and we don't.
I just have an excerpt from the statute. I don't have the statute itself. But I do know that we had to provide, pursuant to the clerk's notice, we had to provide special notice to the school, notify them that if they wanted to object, they should object in writing. They could have objected in writing to this hearing, and they apparently have not. We've never received any notice they have.
I don't see it as detrimental to the school because we feel that is important for every single liquor license holder in town, and that's why we have such a stringent police department that go and run these audits frequently. So I don't think there's any problem with it. I would like to have this run by our attorney to make sure we're writing it correctly, and if so, should we be going back to our other liquor license holders, such as Bertucci's?
I think that no one else may be within that 500-foot radius.
Well, if he is, and it's property to property, you can bet
gotta be
Bertucci's
Bertucci's.
is.
Sure, the baseball field is.
If it's property to property, then the shops would be,
Yeah,
as a property.
so we want to check on that, if we could.
Do you need to have that for the issuance of the license?
According to the ABCC, we do. No license unless you determine in writing. And as I said, I only noticed it because the clerk provided us with special notice that had to be provided to the school that they could object in writing, as opposed to the general notice we had to provide to the other abutters.
All right, and so obviously we've felt that with the other ones because we've never stopped them from opening. So any further discussion on all those in favor of the written notice as required by law? All right, so that's 4-0, that passed. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
The attorney, if you have, maybe have you do some legwork for us, if you've seen a similar determination or are aware of one, can you please forward it to Debbie?
I will.
So she can pass it.
Pass that back to Debbie. That was very helpful. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, folks.
And we'll sign this and move this along. Okay, Rose and George. Rose Maurice and George Shea are here for, I assume, 3-year terms on the Council on Aging. Hi. Hi.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'll pass.
Want to state your names and addresses?
Rose Moraes, 46 Longfellow Drive.
George Shea, 73 Duxbury Lane.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in, and they're both incumbents. They've been on the Council of Aging before. So thank you for volunteering again. Anyone have questions for them? Mark?
Yeah, I have, and it's not so much you folks as, we've also got in our packet a review of the bylaws or
Yes.
renovations of the bylaws of the Council on Aging. I was wondering if members of the Council on Aging actually saw those, or if you had any comments about them, and what you saw as any reasons for it, or go ahead.
Well, first off, I only served 1 year, and because I was the replacement for Dr. Carey, I certainly was not going to fill his big shoes, but only a 1-year appointment, and now it will be for the 3rd-year appointment. My understanding is that he was one of the primary authors, I see nodding of that by the chair, of those bylaws. I have read them. I thought they're well drafted. I think they're more reflective of what the organization, Council on Aging, is trying to do now than the others. And I think that was the primary, I'm told by some of the other members, that was the reasoning behind the new bylaws being brought forward.
And I know before Dr. Carey passed away, he worked up until like a week before he passed on those bylaws. He wanted to be sure that they were done correctly and effectively. So, yes, we did have a chance to review them.
So they've been in the works for a while, obviously.
Yes, I would say a couple years.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I saw them for the first time this weekend, so it's not that I guess I have one quick question, and because I work a lot in bylaws and nonprofits and organizations, and one of the missing elements of those bylaws, which is recommended by every organization, and primarily there's an organization called BoardSource, who's a kind of the expert on nonprofit, is term limits for board members. Is there a reason that wasn't included in that? And it's not so much that it's term limits, and people say, well, gee, that means I serve 2 terms and I can't do it anymore. And the answer is no, you serve 2 terms. You have to take a year off, and then you can go back on for multiple terms. Is there any reason that that term limits, either of the term limits weren't included? I'm certainly going to bring that up when we talk about those.
The only conversation, very limited on that, to be honest with you.
Because we can't fulfill what we have.
That shouldn't matter, but
Because it's not addressed as well as your point. In all candor, I think part of it is there's sometimes questions getting people willing to serve. And I see the chairs nodding, understanding this. You people got a lot more experience on this than me. Like Rose, I'm thrilled she's willing to step up again. So I don't know. I think probably that was the reason it never was addressed. Now maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I thought. There was some indication on that. And Mark is correct. Reference to a lot of places doing term limits off for a period and then back. But sometimes it's hard to fill. It's like, for example, your terms.
Yes.
You're not on so many terms and then off and then back, because quite honestly, how many people want to go through what you go through?
That could be a question for the charter review people who are going to be interviewed tonight.
It's all noted.
Good idea.
Any other questions for our board?
Well, so now that they've made these adjustments to the bylaw, would this have to go in front of town meeting at some point?
No, it's just us.
Just us.
And it goes back to them.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Good
waiting.
evening.
I was hoping to get you in, but I didn't. So- And I'm just going to squeeze Erwin in here before I start bringing the charter people up. Yeah. And Erwin is an incumbent on the Recycling Commission.
Yes.
And you're going-
67 Windsor Place.
Thank you, and you're going for the 3-year term, right?
Correct.
And thank you for volunteering again, we appreciate it. And thank you for no term limits, so you could be here, so we need you. Any questions for Erwin? No? Great that the work you've been doing on the Recycling Commission. My only concern is our costs are going up, and so we have to start recycling even more. So look forward to Recycling 2.0 in town.
Yes, the costs are going up.
Of our trash costs.
Yeah, trash costs are going up, but the recycling center is funded exclusively, from my review of the budget every year, by fees and what we take in from recycled material, getting paid for recycling material. So we're doing our share for the town that way.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mark?
Erwin, do you know if our current pickup contract has the same contribution clause that the old one did, where Allied had to give us a certain amount of money? It was the one that we bought the recycling house or shed.
The swap shop.
Shed.
I think it's the same. I wasn't involved in the negotiations.
Because I was going to ask you, do you know what we've been doing the last year or so? I mean, because the swap shop shed was a great use of, in my opinion, great use of funding. And Stephen, do you know if we got that clause, if we're actually getting funding from?
Or how much money is left?
I know we are.
Okay.
Until June 30th. I think the next fiscal year, we will get one from Waste Management, but not from,
Right, yeah.
not from UMM.
Well, no, right, waste management, I wasn't looking at that.
Yeah.
But waste management, so I guess, because we kind of depend upon the recycling commission to advise us what's the best thing to do with those funds.
Oh, we'd be happy to come up with
Look into that.
ways to
We are
spend
on-
that, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, I'll spread that word to the board.
I just had one other question. I know I'll probably never become a paperless person, but if I put out more paper that I need to get rid of, which my wife, she's probably watching, saying, yes, get rid of more paper. Is that good for the town? Because sometimes I see people have like a lot of cardboard, but is that to our advantage as a town to have
We
more
do get
recycling?
paid for the
Tonnage?
amount of material we recycle, yes.
Okay, so.
We don't pay any more to pick up more, but we get more if we pick up more.
Yes.
I
Okay,
bring mine
great.
from work, so that the town will get a little more
We'll
money.
get a little time, money. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That wasn't right.
And I think what I only have left is the Charter Committee. Anyone else I'm missing? No? Okay, Mr. Nolet and John Fitzgerald.
Are you here for?
Oh, there you are. Okay. I'm going to do two at a time. Two at a time. You want to state your name and your address?
John Fitzgerald, 95 Cedar Road, here in town.
Yeah, and I'm Jerry Nolet, 724 Frank Smith Road in Long Meadow.
Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting. It was longer than I thought. And they're both here for the Charter Review Committee, and everyone has one-year terms because this is a review. We need to extend it, we will. Anything you want to say why you want to
I'm
join?
here to volunteer to serve on that Charter Review Committee. And as I understand it, the function of the Charter Review Committee will be to advise the town manager and select board regarding charter changes which may enhance governance of the town. Additional responsibilities will be to review the composition and responsibilities of boards, committees, legislative procedures, administrative organizations, and financial procedures. Quite a charge. And also review other provisions of the charter as directed by the Board of Selectmen. The charter, which I have a copy here, which you can see that it's rather dog-eared, was created March 9th, 2004, and revised in June of 2007. Simply put, the charter is the Constitution of Long Meadow. And it readily dovetails, I think, with and covers many of the action steps, a total of 85, by the way, action steps in the long-range plan, which was coincidentally prepared April in 2004. The town manager has been active with implementing many of the recommendations, and we thank him for that. Now, the professional planner hired for the long-range plan left us with a statement, which is, Long Meadow is happy being Long Meadow. And I think if you think that through a lot, it says a lot for our community, that Long Meadow is happy with being Long Meadow. I'd be pleased to serve on this committee, and with your approval, I thank you in advance.
Thank you. And Mr. Fitzgerald, why would you like to be on the Charter Review?
Well, I offer my candidacy for this position on the basis of my service on the school committee and on, registrar of voters and a few other positions I've held in town. I think one big problem we had with between the school committee and the select board was communication. And I'd like to take a look at the charter to see if there's something in there that might improve it. This last year, I think our communication worked very well. We were able to put together a budget that everyone agreed on. It accommodated our interests and yours. And I'd like to see that continue. I do have a question about the Finance Committee that is created by the Charter and the appointing authority. As it stands now, and correct me if I'm wrong, the school committee has no input into the Finance Committee. Maybe that's something we should take a look at.
And we don't either.
Pardon me?
We don't either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I'm not really anxious to change things very much. I don't think I'd go along with a statement that people in Long Meadow love Long Meadow. I'd like to see a public opinion survey to test that empirically, but I'm not here to make, or proposing any great changes, but whatever we produce in the way of a document would have to go before the voters, would have to be, quote, sold to them. And I'm perfectly willing to go along with that kind of an approach.
Any questions for them, Mark?
Yeah, I guess, John, the question is, you noted a concern about the Finance Committee, you know, and as Marie pointed out, we don't have any input in the Finance Committee either. It's based on the town moderator and the finance chair, the CFO appointing Finance Committee member and the chair of the Finance Committee. So it's not the select board either. But are there other areas, having been in town government, that you see as being, I won't say broken, but needing specific direction or being addressed?
Well, there have been some occasions when, you know, if for the particular question, the size of the town meeting swells to accommodate the interest group that has been stirred by whatever position is put forward. And in other times it shrinks down to just barely getting a quorum. Apparently that's what the townspeople like. I have not been contacted by anybody saying we really need to change things. I like the idea of town meeting democracy, the old New England tradition. I think that's part of what makes Long Meadow and why it's attractive to so many people. I think we have an open government as is. People can come before this board or the school committee with whatever grievance they have or imagine they have and get a hearing on it. So again, I'm not proposing any major changes. I would like to sit down and see what some other folks have to say as we meet.
Same question, Jerry, for you.
Yeah, one of the things that, I guess, unlike a lot of folks in town have served on many committees, probably the only committee that I haven't served on is the school committee. But I did serve a couple of years on the finance committee. And I think the finance committee now thinks that the charter has removed them from responsibility or kind of made them less attractive to the community. But one of the basic features, which I think has been kind of forgotten, is that the Finance Committee responsibility is to review the budget and present their findings to the town meeting for us who don't spend a lot of time reviewing the budget and give a preference as to whether they are in agreement with the article or against the article. I was disappointed at the last town meeting when the Finance Committee, which happened to apparently, when I got my warrant, which I went to the town meeting with in advance, I had read the budget, I had read the warrant, and the article that was in question was the Adult Center. And they had apparently not recommended that we approve the Adult Center $250,000 requirement or interest. And I thought that as a resident of Longmeadow, going to town meeting after doing my homework, and others likewise, might have gotten the impression that Council on Aging was not, that the Finance Committee was not approving the Council on Aging request. And on the floor of the meeting, they changed but by then, perhaps a number of folks that were there had already made up their mind as to how they were going to vote. And I thought that that was probably somewhat out of order. Not to say that you can't change it, but to have it in print and recognize that it is in print, that those that do their homework, you don't go to town meeting to get educated, you educate yourself and then go to town meeting. So that was one factor. But I do think that we need a stronger, disciplined Finance Committee that is willing to stand up and say, okay, we have read that budget, we understand the budget, and we're going to submit that budget and its findings to town meeting. And I would disagree with my friend that the the professional that, when we did the long-range plan and said that Long Meadow is happy being Long Meadow. I find very few people that are not happy with being in Long Meadow. So that's why we'll have more than one person on the...
That's right. Well, then we need a lot of thought
That'd be fun.
and experience, different experiences. Tom?
Well, Jerry, I just wanted to say that I appreciate your example, because that is an important thing. You know, we look at voters and we want them to, you know, do the best job they can, and we don't want it to be confusing for them. So that's the kind of thing a charter commission, you know, would try to sort out, those kinds of issues. Now, you mentioned the dates of 2004 and 2007, the original charter and then the revisions. And were you involved in either of those
I was not.
committees? Okay.
I do have the list of folks that were, if you're interested in
No,
hearing
I just
that.
wondered if you were on that, but.
The charter chair was Bob Clark was, Roger Wojcik was chair, Peter was on that committee, Arlene Miller was the vice chair,
Oh, okay.
and there were 10 or 12 people. Kathy Grady, who's gone, Bill Hoff, Peter Landon, Arlene Miller, Roger Wojcik, Joe Cutie, Rebecca Townsend, who is now our moderator, and Roger Wojcik is chair.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I also have the list of folks that were on the Long Range Committee, and there were a lot of folks there. Cynthia Summer was chair. Dave Appleman was there, Phil Clark, Russ Dale, Saul Feinstone, Elizabeth Foote, Paula Gallup, Tom Harella, Bill Hoff, Carol Leary, myself, Richard Marquise, Arlene Miller, John Papali, Mark Schneider, and Paula Trudeau. So there was a whole list of folks that were guided by a professional planner, and we generated 85 action steps in that long-range plan. And I'm happy to say that our town manager has been implementing many of those steps since he's been here.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for?
No, I just want to remind all the applicants that this is a charter review committee and not a charter commission. This isn't, we're
I
not,
used the wrong term, sorry.
we're not intending, or at least it's not being chartered as a group that takes a proposal to the legislature.
Mark and I grew up with management by objectives, and we're committed to action steps. It will not go beyond 1 year.
Okay, great. Wonderful. It sounds like it's going to be a
Fine, anything to say.
hard-working group. Thank you very much for volunteering.
Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Michael Clark and Liz Bones.
Did you remember
Right, yeah. Thank you for coming this evening and patiently waiting over an hour.
It's like all the exiting members of the school committee are here tonight.
Once that limelight started to dim, they thought, oh, we better get back involved in something.
We don't know what to do on our Monday nights.
But you're still going to meetings, aren't you?
No.
No,
No, they're done.
Yeah.
Oh, so you take the summer off?
So are we going to ask them for opening statements for you?
Well,
before we
first of
go
all,
ahead?
name, your address, and why you want to be on the committee.
Liz Bone, 34 Elizabeth Circle. I guess I'd like to be it because I'd like to stay involved in community service and town government, and I'm interested with the Charter Review Commission just because I remember a few years ago when we had a different town manager and the select board, and there was a lot of friction in between whose roles were what, and so I think it's a great idea to take a look at the charter again and see if maybe some clarification to that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And update it. It is we're in the 21st century, and I know Long Meadow likes to be Long Meadow, but it also needs to keep up with the future.
Michael
Clark, 169 Cooley Drive, and thank you for having us tonight. Over the last 7 years, I've been a member of the Finance Committee, I've been a member of the School Committee, and so I've had a lot of opportunity to engage with a lot of boards and committees and work, well within the confines of the charter. And so I think like Liz and like everyone who else who's spoken, we've seen what's worked well, and we've seen areas where maybe there's a chance for improvement. Maybe there should be some consolidation of roles and responsibilities. in my professional life, I have the opportunity to work with 9 different communities, each of them having very unique governments. Long Meadow is actually the only community I work with that has a strong town manager and a strong select board, and which is great. And so I think what I'm able to kind of bring to the table is a little bit of diversity in terms of my professional experience and what I've seen working well in other communities and what I know works well here. In terms of things that I think could change, and we touched on this a little bit, but one example that stands out to me is that as a select board, you don't have the ability to remove someone from an appointed board who's actually not doing their job. And that was something that Marie and I both experienced when we appointed the Technology Advisory Board, where we had a chairman who, for over a year, refused to call a meeting. So that board hasn't functioned. And obviously, you might run into a little bit of a political issue if you remove people because you don't like what they did. But in the case of someone not showing up and not doing their duty, you have no ability other than to let their term expire. So, there's elements in this charter that I think could obviously make the board's job easier, could make town governance better, and I look forward to the opportunity to work on identifying what those are and making that recommendation to you.
Any questions, Mark?
I have a couple of questions. First, Michael, of course, just to respond to your comment. I think there's a difference between some appointed boards and others. Charter-specific boards, you're absolutely right, but I think in theory that if somebody on a committee that's a subcommittee, if you will, of the select board, if we wanted to, I think we could have. I know, I'm not sure, but it's not a charter-based, some of these are not charter-based committees, so that's neither here nor there, but I just wanted to comment on that, kind of as a warning to people out there who think they can get and do anything they want. But the elephant in the room for me tonight, and I say this with all respect, John's here, Liz, you're here, and Michael, you're here, is, are we going to end up with a school committee-oriented charter review as opposed to a town-based charter review when people like me are sitting here saying, I'm not sure the school committee ever really embraced the charter. Certainly didn't embrace the finance portion of the charter where the school committee was obligated by the charter to have a single finance department, and that's never happened. We've never pushed the issue, but it's never happened. So I guess, that's really the elephant in the room for me here, but is how do you, both of you, overcome my fear that it's going to be a school-oriented charter review committee when, in fact, the school committee didn't embrace the charter, in my opinion?
You want to take that first?
Sure. Well,
don't let them get away with that.
Goodness.
I'm happy to go first. Joe. You look like you were gearing up.
Well, I had a counter question to you. What do you mean that the school committee didn't have a singular finance committee?
So maybe you don't even know, which is part of the problem, but Michael does.
I can speak to it.
Are you talking about the ASBO?
No, the charter required that, for example, the assistant superintendent for finances, I guess, is his title?
Unified finance department.
Be a unified finance department, and that there not be, that literally he reports through Paul Pasterzik.
Right.
That's part of the charter.
Right.
Never happened. It didn't happen in 2004, and there were a bunch of reasons, and you came on much later.
Okay.
And it never really
worked well together.
No, but it's not following the charter. And under the charter, the assistant superintendent for finances doesn't work for the superintendent. Under the charter, he or she reports to the CFO of the town.
Right.
And is that good, bad, or indifferent? I'm not going to judge it. I'm just saying it's never been embraced by the school committee. And at this point, we could sit back this year and say, okay, there are going to be 3 new members of the school committee, and the fact is it's required by charter, so let's knock it off and get somebody who does what they're supposed to do. And I'm not sure the select board's prepared to do it.
Well, the charter.
I'm happy to speak to that
go ahead.
specific fact without kind of devolving into something else.
Yeah, right.
So,
that's what I didn't want to get there.
Multiple times, through both my tenure as chairman of the school committee, but also just as vice chair of the school committee, we were approached by members of the audit committee relating to our perceived non-compliance with that aspect of the charter. And in consultation with our legal counsel, determined that that element of the charter is superseded by national laws, which allow the town to, or the school department to retain its own finance department, and it would require both a vote of the school committee and a vote of town meeting to unify the finance committee, or the finance departments. And so, we obviously made a decision that was in the best interest of our department to retain our own finance staff. But with regard to the sort of perception that you've got 3 school committee people running, as of next Tuesday, I'm no longer on the school committee, and neither is Liz or John. I've enjoyed and loved my 6 years on that board, but as I begin to transition off of that committee, I'm interested in serving the community at large, and while I do appreciate the time I spent on that board, I acknowledge that we have a lot of interaction with other boards and committees that, including capital planning, including community preservation, including parks and rec, all of which work both with the school department and the board of selectmen. And I think at the end of the day, taking a holistic approach and looking at each of these boards and committees, identifying what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, what's working and not working isn't necessarily a biased question. And certainly, I can make the commitment right now to look at everything with eyes wide open, which is what I feel like I've always done and fully intend to continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging.
Can I just
Sure, go
answer
ahead.
back? I thought you were aware of that issue.
Not at all. First I ever heard of it.
Really? Because I'm pretty sure we've...
I have a letter that I sent
That's why I
to one of the
wasn't sure what you
former
were talking
chairmen
about.
of the audit committee that I will forward to you before they deactivate my
Never
email
saw that.
account.
And I also agree, I am involved with lots of boards in town, and I don't put school first in any of them. I put town first.
And I think there's probably going to be a place where we can also give them a list of some of our concerns. It doesn't mean they have to take them up, but
Right,
yeah, it would be interesting for you to see what we've been thinking in the past few years.
And to that point, I think it's important, as elected boards that have to interface with appointed boards. Certainly the select board has its own constraints and its confines in terms of how it does business. So I think the way, and I obviously don't want to be the person dictating how this process goes. But I imagine that process involves interviewing each board and committee about what they find is working, what they find is not working. The first board obviously should be this one.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely let you know what we've been worried about in the past. Any other questions for Liz and Michael? Thank you very much. I think it's going to be an interesting committee. The type of people that are coming on it, it's going to be a little rock and rolling. It should be
It'll be a lot of
interesting.
fun. Thanks for indulging.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks so
thank
much.
you for
Appreciate it.
waiting.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
appreciate it.
Okay.
And we got one more person. I kept you the best for last, and I know you also will roll right into audit, and so thank you for waiting for us. Okay.
Peter Landon, 5 Meadowbrook Road, Long Meadow.
And you're trying for the Charter Committee, too.
Charter Review Committee, right.
Thank you very much. And why are you interested in it?
I think, we're going to convene the former charter group to post-mortem this a number of times. We didn't get any momentum. We didn't do that. But I've been post-morteming it in my mind since 2004. And, I think that what's not happening with this form of governance is that we're not getting the boards and committees involved in strategic planning within the current government structure. I think the reason is that we created silos between the committees, and we didn't mandate any cross-representation where, where a capital planning committee member would be a part of the finance committee. A simple example. If you look at Duxbury, Northborough, Weston, and Wellesley governance structures, which I did this week in preparation, and I'd seen Northborough in depth, they build bridges all the way through and cross communications because everybody's in the same business.
Yeah.
And that debate you just had with the school committee was an excellent one because it's communications and cooperation and teamwork. Well, I tried to get teamwork, soft words into the charter, and I was failed totally. I was soft, didn't work. But I came from a background in business where without teamwork, you didn't have a job. And it was a bottoms-up kind of aura and feeling, and that teamwork evidence I miss it a lot in government. I think, I don't know what the swelling of the town meeting that Mr. Fitzgerald mentioned, it's certainly been on my mind as you had 3 major capital projects vetted, and you can swell for each group. DPW unfortunately doesn't have a constituency, and it took everybody and his brother to, try to explain why you needed, to replace that facility. But how to deal with that is certainly, I think, has to be dealt with. And I don't know what the answer is. I've seen a number of structures, a tweaking of town meeting, form of government in a way that you get more balance into the equation of how you move strategic projects or prioritize them. I watched the select board, try to maneuver to get some sense, and it has to be coordinated with the whole strategic financing of this Proposition 2.5 ceiling that we're facing, and the prioritization of those projects. It seems to be a major test of can we coordinate and have teamwork and keep the tax rate in the right position and avoid the monster around the corner of Proposition 2.5 ceiling, which Moody's just wrote us up this past week that we're one of 12 towns in Massachusetts that are looking at that in the future. In Western Mass, others have hit it already, West Springfield, and Holyoke, and so that changes the way you do things. I think the elephant in my room has always been, from my time on finance audit, I was the first chairman of audit, and really pushed hard for the audit committee to exist in the early charter. Very few cities and towns have it, and I think the work we did, it's not duplicated in any way by the Finance Committee. And one of our jobs is to look at that bond rating. And that bond rating, the cost of financing going forward, as we look at, $60, $70, $80 million in new general obligation bonds for all 3 facilities on the Long Meadow tab, plus the 40 that goes on the state of Massachusetts tab. And it's a unique time, and I think reviewing the charter, as you call it, is important. And I know you have the final decision because we make recommendations, and you still have the power and the control here. I think the elephant in the room for me always has been labor relations and the cost of labor and the cost of benefits, and I don't know if that has any way to be dealt with in the charter. I think it's probably more of an operating mantra of how things proceed. But if you just look at what the governor of Connecticut is trying to address a $1.5 billion deficit for Connecticut next year, he's asking labor for $700 million in concessions on salaries and benefits. That's going to be, we have 11 unions. I remember when we first started the charter, we have 11 unions or thereabouts, Steve, less than 11?
5.
5? Okay, that's more manageable than I recall.
Oh, 5 town side, then we have, I think, 5 on the school side, too. Yeah, so I guess total, town and school combined, it could be around 11.
Yeah, so that I don't know if it's adjustable with this governance, but I always thought it was like a below-the-radar kind of thing that I never could, after spending 15 years in those committees and being on the pension review committee, I don't have any idea how that's all managed. And maybe the average taxpayer, seeing it's 80% of the cost of operating the town, might get some insight somehow in the future. That's it.
Well, actually, you brought up a fascinating point, and that was about negotiations and everything on the charter. One of the things I find interesting is that town manager is not able to be in the room in any negotiations on the school side. And I don't know if that can be fixed by the charter. That's only if the schools want to invite you.
I technically am a voting member of the school committee for their contracts.
You are.
But they don't have to let me be on the bargaining team. And the last time around they did not.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point when you bring that up, because I never even thought about our whole, that and our OPEB and everything, being able to look at the charter and see how the charter can help us out of that problem.
You know, it's interesting because the rating agencies and the governance, the bodies that require accounting rules are taking and putting the liabilities of benefits on the financial statement now. So the net worth of Long Meadow will go from a huge positive when you bring up both the pension liability and the unfunded retiree health care liability. Will go to a negative starting in the year 2018. We won't have a net worth. And
we won't have a net worth.
Well, we have tremendous assets, but we have tremendous liabilities.
Yes, exactly.
Tremendous, yes.
Mark?
Peter, how do you balance what you call communications with the other side of that coin, which is getting as many people involved in town government as possible? You know, because when you have interlocking boards, you tend to have fewer people involved than when you have, you know, every board is separate from every other board.
You're saying the difficulty of getting
Well, I'm just
folks
saying,
to
you know,
participate?
where's the weight on what's more beneficial for the town? Having 10 boards with 60 people, or having 10 boards with 35 people because they're interlocking on multiple boards? You know, are we better off having 60 people involved in the town, or 35?
I don't know. Becky Townsend has an opinion. She liked the more the merrier, but I guess it's the quality of the participation. You know, that there's the committee participation levels, like the instance that Mr. Clark just mentioned, where, you know, that technology committee, the lack of that meeting was just it was gnawing situation. And I guess if you get 35 quality, I'd settle for it. If you get 65 quality, it would be dynamite. And then if we had the platform, and I guess that's to communicate of what's going on in capital planning, what's going on in bond rating side to other folks all amongst the 35 on some platform that you could, or a package of information that's given to every board and committee, and the really interested folks would be up to speed on how these major issues are that we have facing going forward. It would be very exciting. I don't know who. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah, right. It's a big challenge.
Any other questions for Mr. Landon?
No, I have a question for you, Maria.
Thank you.
Are nominations for these boards, particularly this Charter Review Committee, closed?
No.
Okay,
In fact, there's still applications coming in. We're going to be interviewing on the 19th.
So it's not that we have 6 applications for 6 positions?
No. In fact, we have 7. How many applications are left for interview? Mr. Klotz is coming in next time. Do we have 1 or 2 more after that?
We have Mr. Klotz and another one. I'm waiting for confirmation, but the 19th
is the last date.
Of it.
Okay.
Applications were cut off.
So if you know someone, you definitely could still put their hat in the ring.
Thank you.
Because it is an important committee.
We did cut off the application date, but if the board wants to accept them late, they can.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to know.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we won't be able to vote on these until after the 19th, when we have everybody together. Everyone had been able to be interviewed. All right, and there will be some more interviews for other boards and committees, or just the charter?
Those finished up today, except for Board of Health. One of the applicants had surgery, remember?
Yes,
requested a
yeah.
later date.
And we still have openings on boards and committees, right? Yeah, because even the building committee has an opening on it, so. All right, why don't we move on, since we have the audit people here, do you want to move down to new business and do the selection of the new audit firm in the audit correction report? Oh, bring a third chair. It's okay. And just share the microphone. You're here, you get to speak too.
Can I repeat my question? from
Now you
earlier
can
in the day?
repeat it, yes. I was
From
trying to
earlier in
get
the evening?
everybody in for the interviews.
We're talking about a selection of a new audit firm. I'll just start out by saying, from my perspective, which is, I heard very, very little of this other than a couple of, short emails that weren't in context to what we got today, is that, the perception is the audit firm decided they didn't want to do this anymore because there was a disagreement with the town. And when you look at it from, my perspective, which had nothing there, is, gee, we've got an outside auditor and disagrees with the town. Is that a red flag we as elected officials ought to be concerned about? And so I guess that was the purpose for my question. And I will tell you that I've read a little bit more over the last couple of days from this that make me feel a little bit better. But early on, we got a somewhat cryptic email too about what was going on. And Paul, maybe we're better off hearing from Peter, because he's not the professional in the audit committee, and just to hear the sense of what drove this, and is it because that the auditor was asking the town to do stuff and the town didn't want to do it?
Should Mark be nervous?
Yeah, should I be nervous? Thank you. That's
No, you shouldn't be nervous. I believe the situation was that I didn't get involved in the hiring of the last audit firm, but I did watch the performance for a year plus, and I think the audit firm bid extremely aggressively price-wise, and then they started to nickel and dime us for situations to make up for the fact that they had been aggressive in buying the business. That's my outsider's view of it. And then I watched the quality of the interaction, both when the independent auditor was speaking with us, and I've dealt, as a CFO in private sector, I dealt with independent auditors all the time, and I always find them to be value added and quality, and they respond to your strategic thoughts, and I didn't see that interaction from that firm. So I think it was a good separation, and we had 1 year left on the contract. We finished 2, and you'll hear the results as we go forward. But Mr. Pacific can probably
go ahead, Paul. Now go ahead. I'd like to hear your comments.
I think
too.
Peter hit upon the 2 points. There was getting to be a soured relationship between a certain committee member of the audit committee and the audit manager or the audit partner, where they were calling myself and Stephen saying, some intervention has to be had, and it wasn't about the financials, but it was about the relationship between the auditor and the audit committee. We did intervene. We set up a quick schedule to get certain things done in a timely manner, because we needed to get that audit done in a timely manner to get that CAFR out. So that went very well once that schedule was set up, and it took out some of the strained relations that had happened just prior to that, after the field work, but before the draft audit was done. So anyway, we got through that, and we then started on the CAFR, and the agreement was that there was really 3 main sections of the CAFR, that the town was going to write Section 1, which is more of a narrative. Section 2 was the audit, which was basically already done, and Section 3 was a statistical section that we had done in-house. As it turned out, they reviewed our part. They had found a couple things that they wanted changed. There were some numbers in there specifically with regard to financial numbers that we had produced over a 10-year history. There were just, as much as we did the 10-year history, there were 4 reports, I believe, each with a 10-year history, and each of them having a whole slew of financial numbers and mathematical calculations. There were a few numbers that they thought needed to be changed. And subsequent to that, there was an invoice that they wanted to talk about for their additional work, where we had given them our contracted amount for that CAFR review, and quite honestly, I refused to pay it. And again, I think as Peter alluded to, they may have come in and got a little bit more than they bargained for with the quote, and now they're trying to do the end around. And like I said, I confirmed with Stephen, he looked at it, and he backed me on it, and so the relationship remained to be a little bit soured. They did give us a quote for the next 2 fiscal years. We did get a quote for FY 18 and 19 because we were looking to see if we were going to exercise the option. Their quote for FY 18 option grew dramatically, so I think they had realized their error. It went from, I believe, like 28,000 to 37,000, so it went up 33%, basically overnight. And we kind of had, we didn't accept the renewal, and we knew we were kind of on a sour note, and I think it was by mutual agreement that we said, I think we just, you go your way, we go our way, things are done, and we'll just call it a day. And then the audit committee at that point in time, somewhere around March when Katie started coming in, we said, well, we still have to get the FY17 audit done because that was the last year of the contract. We went out to bid, and basically that's what brings us here tonight is we did do that bidding process and are making a recommendation for an auditor for the next 3 fiscal years as would normally happen. It's just off schedule a little bit.
Hey, for the record, I feel better.
Okay, good.
So,
No, but you can understand.
yeah, and actually you had the answer in December. Or no, when was LMM here to present the audit?
LMM here was probably early January or late December.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
January.
yeah, and I remember distinctly when LMM and the then chair of the audit committee were sitting there, and somebody asked about, did you feel like you had sufficient level of interaction with non-staff? You heard somewhat of a sarcastic answer from the auditor, and then you heard the chairman say, yeah, I wasn't, the nicest person or something like that. It all kind of, but I mean, I sat there and I was like, oh, okay.
But you knew it, you heard it in context. I just heard it as an answer to the question, so I hear you, but I didn't get it then, I guess.
Any other questions?
I mean, the friction was evident there.
Yeah.
I'm the new chairman. I've been chairman 2 weeks. I just want to clarify that.
There's the other chairman, okay.
Any other questions for them in regards to that issue? You're looking for then, are you going to tell us about who you selected, and then do you need a vote from us?
You had in your packet the 2-page Mark Mr. referred to, that you read that, and it's in great detail. You want me to quickly go through it?
Yeah, just give us the highlights so that the residents can hear.
It's a 3-year contract. The numbers are pretty much that we went out for bid with 8 firms, and we got 1 back because we were bidding at a time of the year when they are doing their work in their municipal clients. So the 1 firm, fortunately, we got back was extremely well qualified, has an office in Western Mass, and has a team of professionals that will represent them extremely well, and going forward do it, in my opinion, from a short exposure to them, a fine job. They have the same firm that we're recommending, Melanson Heath, has other clients in Western Massachusetts. I have Wilbraham, West Springfield, Holyoke, Ludlow, and others in the area. And Paul has talked to many of the CFOs, and maybe you could mention that, Paul, because we did our homework to make sure the enthusiasm of the committee was matched by their performance with other local clients. And you talked to those folks. Anything you want to say, Paul?
Yeah, again, I had contacted the finance director over in Wilbraham. I spoke to the city auditor in West Springfield. I called somebody I knew for a long term out in Fitchburg, quite honestly, but had since retired. But I spoke to their replacement, who had dealt with Melanson and Heath for a number of years in a different capacity as treasurer collector. But again, I wrote down the terms that they used in describing the relationship with them. They're well trained, helpful, thorough. They always had a manager in the field. They're always there when you need them, type of thing. So I mean, those were some of the key things that we wanted to hear. That they're going to be available for help. They do the audit. They've been in the accounting and municipal accounting field, ever since I've been around. It's been a while. So, again, I believe they're very well qualified. They bid, when we first went out to bid many years ago, they were one of the finalists. And they probably came in second. At that point in time, it was Tom Scanlon Jr. who got a renewal. They had not come back and bid in the interim over the couple of years that we did bidding. And it was more, in speaking to them, it was more of, it just wasn't fitting into their schedule at the time, where this did fit into their schedule. And I will say, I did have a conversation with Tom Scanlon Jr. One might have, again, he did our audit for a number of years. And the reason why he didn't bid is because of our late bid and him having his schedule already set, that he couldn't fit us in. A part of the audit requirement is to have this audit completed, done, and you folks have voted on it by December 31st of 2017. And that would be in order to comply with us getting the CAFR back into the GFOA. It has to be done by that point in time. So there's a very small window that they had available that other outfits did not. That's probably the main reason why there's only one bid here, other than anything else.
And Katie, were you happy with this firm?
The two people from Melanson Heath, I think the partner, she's been doing this for 20 years, I think, she said. So just her breadth of knowledge, especially, as well as all, Western Mass municipalities. And they seem very professional. And, one thing I kind of asked them was that, are you, there for counsel? And they said they are. And I think that's always a good working relationship with the auditors, that you can bounce questions off of them, and they can really be a resource to the, Paul and his team.
Sounds good. Questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. We have a proposal for a 3-year contract. And I guess my question, based on your comment, Paul, you just said is, the timing and it's kind of short notice and that kind of stuff. If we had asked for a 1 or 2 year contract, were we likely to get much higher prices from one firm? Or more importantly, 2 years from now, are we likely to be able to get a lot more people potentially to be capable or able to bid on a contract? Short question is a 3-year contract to our detriment or to our benefit?
A 1-year contract, you would probably have a much higher price, because that's the year that they're doing the learning curve.
Right.
You have the high learning curve, they're reading the charter, they're reading the bylaws, they're going through, they're trying to get our systems in place, they're doing their flow charts of our systems, learning our internal controls, things of that nature. If it was a 1-year contract, I'm going to say definitely it's going to be higher, as opposed to them spreading out 3. It's like, a trash contractor who has to buy the new trucks. You just ask him to do 1 year, he's going to put the price of those trucks right in there instead of amortizing over a 3 or a 5-year contract if you gave that hauler that type of extension.
Okay, but and the fact, from my perspective, the one thing we see, we go to MMA meetings every January, and there are two kinds of organizations there, and one of them is accountants. There's probably 20 accountant people who want to be municipal accounting firms sitting in that, in that trade show trying to push that. And so that's why I was responding a little bit to when you say we didn't get a lot of bids. Now, they may all want to work within 30 miles of Boston too. I didn't see a whole lot of Western Massachusetts, Western areas, but that was the basis for my comments, I guess.
Okay. Are you looking for a vote tonight?
Vote to authorize, again, I think this one is something specific in the charter where the selectmen do vote on the contract and approve it. We'll have the town manager sign it.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 3-year contract with Melanson Heath to provide audit services for the town of Long Meadow.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And now you want to tell us about the audit correction report?
Sure. The audit correction report, again, this goes back to the FY16 audit. I don't think there's anything extraordinary in here. I'll go through the findings very briefly, and then just to go through the updated explanations that I put in there. The first finding that we had, there was a recommendation that when we do our Chapter 90 reimbursements, we just make sure that those reimbursements were actually charged to the Chapter 90 account on the accountant's records. This last time around was the last time that we did a reimbursement. Spoke to the auditor. He made sure that everything was in place, that any reimbursement requested of the state was actually charged to that account as opposed to some other account that we might have had on our records. Finding number 2 basically dealt with, there was a number of issues with checks, so on and so forth. I'm just trying to read it here. Certain fees were being collected by teachers without any school committee. That's one thing. Checks were held for as long as 2 months without being deposited was the main issue at hand here. And speaking with the treasurer and collector just prior to writing this up, I asked her if she had seen any of those delayed checks being turned over. Everything is being turned over in a timely manner. We do have a policy, an internal policy. I believe that internal policy, when this was when the issue first was discovered, that internal policy was sent over to the school department. Please remind your people. Anyway, we haven't had the problem since that time that originally came up. The third dealt with, let's see.
Abandoned property.
Abandoned property that was taken care of, basically at town meeting. We had an acceptance of Chapter 200A, Section 9A, which gave us an outline or a procedure that the treasurer, collector, the accounting office must follow in order that the town, I don't want to say retain those funds, but are able to account for those funds as our surplus, basically take possession of them. We're talking mostly about outstanding checks. The procedure is we're going to have to go through a series of notifying who the payee was, make notice on the internet, legal notices, things of that. And after a period of about 2 years, we'll finally be able to just wipe those outstanding checks off our records and put that back into our surplus. So that was just approved at the annual town meeting, so that is moving forward. Then we had a couple prior year findings that had not been rectified. The first one dealt with fixed asset accounting. We had put in the fixed assets into the Munis financial software system. It was later discovered that there were some discrepancies between what the auditor had developed in the Excel spreadsheets that we had previously been using to the Munis financial system. Periodically, we go and try to reconcile that, and I think the decision is we're just going to go back to the Excel spreadsheets. It's too much administrative work for us to try to get that whole system going correctly, where the spreadsheets were working fine, and were just much easier to handle. So we kind of spun our wheels there for a little while, but we're probably, like I said, we're just going to go back to those Excel spreadsheets.
So we're going to take this one off the
well, that'll be up to the auditor, but I would hope that it would disappear after that. The second finding dealt with signatures and basically from the warrants or the payables that the school committee submits. There were some new procedures in the Municipal Modernization Act that the school committee implemented as far as making designated school committee people responsible for signing those. They have followed those procedures. We do have the documents, the signed documents, properly signed documents in the accounting office, so that's kind of a non-issue now also. 3 dealt with some people having direct access as far as posting directly into the Munis system. Certain accounts receivable, certain postings. We have rectified most of those where they will go into I'll just call it a bucket, where the town accountant, where the assistant town accountant will now review them first before posting them to the general ledger. There are a few other areas that certain folks are still able to post directly into the general ledger, but most of those have backup by a signature of a department head per se. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. The abatements that are signed off on by the assessors, they can post those directly into the system, but if an auditor went in there, they would then see that they have something to compare it to, that the Board of Assessors would have a vote taken, and they can make the comparison that where, if all those abatements that were put into the system, where they actually voted procedurally accurately, the answer would be yes, there's an audit trail to follow all that. So I think that one also has been relatively taken care of. There's a few other things that we may have to tweak, but they're very minor. Technology recovery plan, part of the capital plan that was voted on at town meeting. We gave the IT director a server upgrade and a power backup system. He will be implementing those and installing them over the summer, in which case then he would work directly with East Long Meadow as far as our backup system is concerned. So he's looking to do that over the summer, and again, he's off on the right step, getting the money at the annual town meeting. And then lastly, we did have some concerns over some student activity expenses that were coming through to us. Probably, not a year ago, but almost a year ago. That was last September. We had met with the person, Tom Scanlon Jr., who did the student activity audit. We had some agreement with the school business manager about what our expectations were. He gave us his side. We came to some mutual agreements about what our expectations were and what he was able to provide to us. Ever since that, we've kind of followed that same path. So we're happy with the progress there and have not had any issues with student activity funds for 6 months now or so.
Any questions on that audit report? No? And I don't think you need anything from us in response to that?
No, it's more informational only.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
Should we move to executive session to reopen to open session? Because I don't want him to be waiting. We have a long agenda still.
It kind of messes with the people who are watching at home and don't see TV. It kind of messes with them. I mean, I think I'd rather just try and get through the business we have quickly.
Okay, let's move quickly then.
Or he lives close by. We can tell him to give us another half hour or 45 minutes or so.
Well, because I think we have another, I would say, 45 minutes of work, half hour worth of work if we move quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So go home. No, or you can stay here.
Or you can stay.
Great entertainment.
I just hate to have you waiting while we're getting through things. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting, May 15th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Abstain.
Okay. And one abstention. May 22nd, was I here? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was the meeting at the police station.
That was the police station.
Oh, yes,
That was a
okay.
15-minute
So I was
meeting.
here, okay.
I move we approve the minutes of May 22nd special meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Town manager evaluation and goals. I sent that to everybody. I just don't know if you want to have a special meeting on the evaluation where we discuss
We were
it.
going to do it on the 19th at our last meeting.
Well, no,
so-
one of the things that was also discussed, are we going to put it on for a regular meeting? I know there was discussion about a special meeting for it. I just don't know, after everyone read it, do we want it as the agenda item on the 19th, or are we going to say, just roll it over to next year? Did you want to have a discussion about the evaluation? And then I was requesting goals. No one seemed to throw goals in. So I just put my goals back into the packet. And I want to see where the select board feels they want to do with the evaluation this year.
Well, should we have a full board as we do the evaluation, or, is
Well,
how
no,
important is that?
this is on to ask when you want to do this. Do you want to do this the 19th?
Yes, I want to do it the 19th.
You do want to do it
in our regular session.
in a regular session?
Marie, it's going to take a half hour,
Okay.
in my opinion.
And
Maybe less.
I say less. I'm not sure if I have too much to say.
I got a lot to say.
I said it all in the evaluation.
Well, I think we all did.
And is there anything else we're looking for from Stephen this year?
The department heads are doing their evaluation. Debbie sent that out
Okay.
this morning.
When do you
was
think
delayed on
that'll
that.
be ready?
End of the week. Certainly in advance of the 19th.
And does everyone have any goals they want to discuss other than mine, or are we just going to approve my goals? Or
I think that I'd like to see a special session on, because I think that there's some benefit to interaction, there's some benefit to discussion that's more than just I got my goals, you've got your goals, and everybody else has their goals. And we did that many years ago and came up with a really good list, which in fact is somewhat the list we're still working on.
Yeah, we're still working on it,
And I
yeah.
think that proves the benefit of coming up. It was comprehensive. It was all, it was long, but I think that's the better way to do it than just,
how does everyone else feel? Do they want a special meeting on it, or just the 19th, take half the meeting in an hour and do goals? Do you want a special meeting for it or not?
Well, it would be nice to do it on the 19th if we could, yeah.
What else is on the agenda for the?
We've got a bunch of stuff on the 19th.
What do we have?
I would, if we're gonna have a kind of a generalized goals discussion, I would see, we've got the regional dispatch, we've got a capital plan update so far. We've got, hopefully we'll have a meeting with the developers of the DIF to work on
The
a
contracts.
framework of a
Okay.
developers agreement, things like that. That may not be ready for the 19th, and so maybe but these goals discussions always take a long time. And
Well-
so if, just want to make sure.
Well, we'll put it on for the 19th, and everyone just give me possible other dates in June, and then I'll pass it on to the next chairman if we don't get it done. So, all right, so the other thing is we need a motion to amend the election warrant.
I move we approve the election warrant as amended, showing that there's 3 open seats on the school committee.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second them.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? You want to pass that down to us, and we'll get that done? Now, we have the COA bylaws. That's a project that's actually been going on for a couple of years. I know Dr. Carey was working on it, and then after his passing, Fannie Lynn spent a lot of time working on them. And they went back and forth, and what I understood the COA was looking for was what was in practice wasn't always in the bylaws, and it was something that for years they wanted to clean up. So, any questions on the bylaws or concerns?
Yeah, I do, Marie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will tell you, this is the first time I actually even heard that they were being rewritten or read through them, and as I alluded to, I mean, I spend a lot of time during the day job working with bylaws of organization. I just have a whole list of questions, and the biggest one is, and I'd like to go through them if I could. The biggest one is, we keep referring in these to the COA director, and I guess the question is that a statutory, acknowledgement of our, what we euphemistically call the adult center director, or is that the title really COA director as opposed to the director of the adult center? Question, how are those 2 positions different?
The title used in here consistently is executive director, and so that is the position title. Executive director of what? COA and adult center are used interchangeably here in the bylaws and in practice. I did make a couple of notes on this as well, because there was a thing that says the executive director, and there's actually a section about executive director. I did add that, and this is for context for people watching at home. This is what's in the packet. What we're looking at right now is a red line markup of town council's review of the bylaws, and they're more like a policy and procedure. Calling them bylaws is not like our zoning and general bylaws. It's just guiding documents for them that they adopt. Like all boards and committees have their own policies and procedures, but they're not town bylaws per se. But it did add that it should say that the executive director of the COA, when you look up top, it said Council on Aging COA. I think the building is called the Adult Center. The department is called the Council on Aging, and maybe but we use them interchangeably. But I think in practice, the COA is the agency, the Adult Center is the facility.
But the town, when somebody's hired for that position, are they hired as the executive director of the Council on Aging, or are they hired as the department manager of the adult?
Executive director is the title.
Okay, then I guess there's an inconsistency we ought to clean up between how we refer to it in town. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying there seems to be this inconsistency, and because it says the executive director of the COA shall be appointed by the town manager, clear it says that, but shouldn't it say?
It should say subject to select board confirmation.
Right. Okay, so.
Yeah, I saw that and noted that too.
Right, subject to select board confirmation to be consistent with the charter.
Yep.
You know, the other thing, Marie, I have is that it says the executive director of the COA should be the treasurer of the Council on Aging. You know, if you're the executive director, you can't be the treasurer. I mean, it's that simple, if that's your title. You know, in my opinion, I think that the treasurer of the Council on Aging ought to be Sandra Coquette, or somebody from our town treasury department to be the treasurer of a town department. But we can't have our town department head be the treasurer.
It's a well taken point. I think the annual appropriations we receive from town meeting by virtue of our budget, okay, can only be spent by our town government. The COA has no authority over the budget of the department. There are certain bequests that have been left to the Council on Aging, and they do have some discretion, but there is some subject to town approval, because some of them are bequests to the COA, which is a department, and some are a request generally to town.
In our custody, too.
But they are in our custody as well. The treasurer thing is kind of an honorific title, I think. I don't think the treasurer actually does anything.
She just reports where the funds are sitting.
Right,
Is that correct?
but I just think fundamentally that
Funds other than Philoka's funds, they have no funds in which to disperse or take.
it just seems to me that you can't be, you know, it's like saying I'm president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. I don't need anybody else running this organization. You know, if we actually have an executive director, if that's the right title, that's my input. What's going to happen is, I don't know what's going to happen to that. Read through it, and it says the COA has standing committees. Why the COA needs a personnel committee? They don't hire, they don't fire, they don't set policies of the COA separate from the town's policies. I can't imagine why we want the COA to have a standing committee be a personnel committee.
Okay, is there another committee you're concerned about?
No, the personnel, I mean, the others made somewhat of sense there. I mean, of what, government interactions that, specific for the, for the COA, that was great. They also, it said members of the COA may not serve on the board of directors of Philoka. I think that it doesn't say that, but I'd like to put that in there. I think that the interaction between interacting boards is problematic for me, especially when we have it says here that COA members are unpaid municipal employees, and I believe that they are. I think that's the right setting. It says that specifically in this. I think it establishes their criteria, and I think we ought to separate that from Philoka, which is a volunteer organization. I've said before, I think the interaction between our cable advisory committee and our Long Meadow Cable Access Group is a little bit problematic, but I certainly think an interaction between Philoka and COA is, and I'd certainly like to see that COA members can't also at least not be officers of Philoka. I'd like to see them not be on the Philoka board as well. But
Wow, talk about making a silo there.
No, because the Philoka, it says the Philoka president is a they can be members of Philoka.
But you just said they couldn't be members of
They
Philoka.
can't be members of the board of Philoka.
Oh, okay.
They can be members, I mean, I can be a member of Philoka,
Right.
I gotta just pay my dues. But they can't be members of the board of Philoka, I would think. And certainly, absolutely should not be officers of the board of Philoka, but I don't think they should be members of the board of Philoka, in my opinion. So I put that there. And if we're going to, I'll have this in a couple other things tonight, but I said it earlier, I still think we ought to have term limits. People problems are not people problems.
We don't have term limits on any other board.
I understand that, but no other boards have bylaws, and we're putting together bylaws. And if we're going to follow the best practices from Board Source, which is kind of the guru of nonprofit boards, that, all it has to say is following 2 consecutive terms, a member of the COA must rotate off the board for at least 1 year. They can be active on committees, they can do other things, they can serve on Philoka for that time, and then they can come back on. But so my major comments here, I was unsure certainly of the COA executive director versus our department head, but, I'm not sure of the treasurer component of it. I'm not sure I don't believe they should have a personnel committee. I'm not excited about the COA board members also serving on the board of FLOCA, and I believe that there should be term limits. Those would be my comments.
Anything else that other people have in the way of concerns about the bylaws? Yes.
I mean, I haven't read them, but I heard one comment about Council on Aging board members being employees. I don't know if that's the correct term.
They shouldn't be listed as
Right.
employees. That's not
I
good.
think employees might have some connotation of certain
Yes.
other rights that I don't think that they would be eligible.
Like a pension.
Yeah, I would not want
just-
them to be listed as
Right.
employees, so you want to say volunteers.
Volunteers, officials.
There are statutory components to this. I'm not that proficient in them. And Mike didn't give a review in that context. It was more of the kind of operating document, which I think was good. When you look at, so the one thing, you have to kind of visualize what this sounds like and what is the reality. So when you look at the executive shall serve as the treasurer and have oversight and supervision of all fund securities and receipts, keep books, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all those treasury functions, that's the department's job, managing that department's budget. So when you look at it as the department budget, they are the treasurer of that. In fact, I think you could probably strike the section and say that the COA shall not have direct access to funds, because we've already had an opinion from council that the custody of even the bequeathments are town.
Well, the way I would like to work this is that anyone else has any comments, we'll send that back to the COA, let the COA make some decisions. If, like one of the opinions is you don't feel comfortable with the word employees in there, and then they can come back to us with, if they want to advocate against one of our positions before we make a vote.
So, one more minor thing, under the operating rev funds, it would be the feedback on the budget from the board should be given to the town manager, not the select board, because then the town manager's budget goes to the select board.
So why don't you add that as another change?
But I think, and to your point, these are bylaws that the select board's going to adopt.
We're going to adopt them, but I'd like to hear their response. I don't want to just say, well, we're going to do this and this and this. They've worked on these. I would like to hear maybe their input on the next meeting. Maybe they'll agree, oh, yeah, we don't need this, oh, we don't need this. Maybe it's only going to come down to one point, and then I would like to hear their view on why they feel it's important for them to be, be on the FLOCA. And I think it's worth it to hear their input on it. So if anyone else has any other changes they want to make to these, I'd like it to go back to the chair. I'm not sure who the chair is now. I think there might have been a reorganization. Now there might have been.
Marilyn Hurst is the chair of the Council on Aging.
No, I'm saying there might have been a reorganization.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, and so whoever it is, well, we could just send that to Marilyn, and if it's not Marilyn, we'll send that on to the next person. Did you get those notes on what Stephen, Paul, and Mark gave on concerns?
I only had a couple of things.
Yeah. And so we'll put that on for when they send it back to us that they're ready. I'm not going to put it on for the 19th. It can just go to the chair and when they're finished, because I think they shut down for the summer, too. Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to the volunteer abatement and senior tax relief. Actually, I asked for this to be put on because a resident pointed out to me that, you can do the volunteer thing, but in so many hours you get a discount on your taxes, but you have to be a resident of town for 5 years. And that seemed a little heavy duty. And I know we had just reviewed that, but I think, why 5 years? I mean, I can understand maybe a year or two to say there have been residents, but 5 years seemed pretty draconian. So I was wondering if we could rethink that. And then the senior tax, Rob Asseltine had worked with John Bowman. When was that? I think it was back in 2012. Brought something to the town floor and then withdrew it because we said, let's see what's happening with Lexington before we put in a senior tax relief. And then the board sort of forgot about it. So I was wondering how the board feels about asking the town manager to look at what other towns are doing.
I don't have any problem, but one of the things we'd asked for certainly was data. We've asked in the past for data and what what's going on with tax abatement and tax relief.
So is there am I the only one who would like to see a senior tax relief in town if there's a need for it?
I think that's appropriate. We should, but again, we want to have it data-driven. We want to know about exactly how many people would be interested or would be eligible, and how do we do it in terms of income-wise, and what do they do in other towns? Yeah, I think that's a good, it's reasonable. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
And where do you offset it?
Right. Well, let's see how much of a need there is. A lot of who's going to be qualified depends on the relief we put in. That's usually, where the income levels and things like that are. And then how many people is Tom saying fall into the bucket? We might be surprised on how many people are on that level, or we might find that there are not that many people. It'd be interesting I think it is something we should be considering, and I just don't know. Tom says, does everyone else feel it's worth looking into?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, so Stephen, would you report back to us on what other towns are doing and how many people would find relief? And I don't think you need what they did in 2012. Do you have that in one of your files? Actually, Mark probably has it somewhere. He's got it.
Whatever. I think some of that information would be hard to find. You're going to have how many seniors are earning income between X and Y. I don't know if you're going to be able to get that information. The only place that really has it is the Department of Revenue or the U.S. Treasury. I don't know if you're going to be able to get that from them. So it might be very difficult to get some of the information that you're requesting. And I also believe that anything that is suggested may have to go to the legislature. I don't think it can be done.
Right.
Okay.
And that's where it was held up before, because we were saying, let's see, I think it was Lexington or Sudbury. We had the very same one we were looking at and said, let's see if it even passes the legislature and the Attorney General's office before we continued.
And I think what I'd like to do is have the assessor's office update what is already available to them now.
Okay.
So, because there are the relief packages for them with certain income levels, and I would just have that updated, because sometimes the levels of income change on an annual basis based upon inflation, just to get that information as part of your material.
Okay. All right, so that was just something I wanted to bring up and see if we could get the project moving down the road. And we already,
Sorry.
We already did the audits and PBTA agreement. Stephen and Mark, do you want to tell us a bit about what's going on?
Yeah, I can start with this. So the PBTA runs a program that's euphemistically called Dial-A-Ride. It's actually got a more formal name, but it started out because it's two functions. One is it provides handicap accessibility access for people who need handicap accessibility access, and rather than make all their buses handicap accessible, they developed this program. It's called Paratransit. And essentially you call up and you make an appointment, and a van comes to your door and picks you up and takes you where you want to, and you pay the PVTA going rate. They expanded that to include Dial-A-Ride for seniors, not people who needed handicap accessible driving, but also things that need people who just wanted access to rides. And in Longmeadow, most people who use it as Dial-A-Ride, if you will, rather than paratransit. The problem is the federal government mandates that your paratransit service meet a specific level of service. In the case of PVTA, it's a 90% on-time, 90% as-promised service, and the PVTA had been falling behind on that, and the reason they'd been falling behind on it, based on their analysis, was they were overwhelmed with what they called Dial-A-Ride service. So many people were calling because I wanted to go to the mall or go to the supermarket or even go to doctor's appointments, that they weren't able to take care of the people who, by law, they needed to serve, which is handicap accessibility or paratransit. And so the PVTA undertook a pretty extensive investigation of the program, how to improve their service. And they came up with a whole bunch of ways to do it, all of which would negatively impact the Dial-A-Ride program. It'd be far fewer hours, you'd have much longer waits, priority would be given to people in paratransit, and essentially the Dial-A-Ride service would start falling apart. But in response, they said, on the other, to get away from this, what we can do is put together a program where the PVTA strongly supports Dial-A-Ride services at the local community. And so out of that came a program called, right now there's the two-town trolley, which is East Longmeadow and Hamden, and they're going to call it the three-town trolley, hopefully, if we approve it, which will be a service that will be run by the local Council on Aging. In this case, it'll be run in East Longmeadow, where instead of calling the PVTA, we'll give out a different number. Our COA will make that available. The town website will make that available. And we'll essentially manage our own system outside of the PVTA. The good news is that it's going to be cheaper. So instead of paying PVTA rates, you'll pay three-town trolley rates. It's going to be $2 instead of $2.75. But more importantly, we think the service will be better because it'll be locally run, locally operated, locally managed. To facilitate this happening, the PVTA is going to make vans available to, in this case, the COA who will run it. So there'll be PVTA retired vans, if you will. They'll maintain service on them, they'll maintain them, but the town needs to operate them. And the PVTA will provide some level of subsidy for this program to the towns. From the perspective of somebody who's been sitting in on the PVTA and analysis of the paratransit systems for some time, this really falls into the category of a win-win-win for everybody. It's a win for the residents, it's a win for the towns, and it's a win for the PVTA, who now can take their paratransit service and focus on what the law is mandating, which is to provide, if you will, handicapped accessibility service for people who really need it, and not worry about getting somebody to the grocery store or to their friend's house or wherever they want to go because they want to take a bus. And so the proposal today is that we approve, and this has been approved already by the PVTA boards at their last meeting, but that the Longmeadow Select Board approve the operation of Longmeadow's entry into this three-town trolley, Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, and Hamden, for the operation of Dial-A-Ride services, AKA paratransit, but it's really Dial-A-Ride services for seniors in the town to provide services within Longmeadow and to within the three towns. And so I'm going to make a motion that we approve the proposal that was submitted to all of us as the intermunicipal agreement, which is what it formally is, to provide the service for the seniors in Longmeadow who can save some money and get better service by doing it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Stephen, did you want to add something?
Mark did an excellent, thorough job explaining it. I would just add that there's virtually no cost to Longmeadow. East Longmeadow is going to schedule, dispatch, manage the vans, manage the entire project by virtue of this intermunicipal agreement. So when you look at like the operator, and this is really East Longmeadow, and I know their Council on Aging has already begun the process of ramping up to add staff and be ready to start on July 1st, so in a couple of weeks. So I echo Mark's recommendation of approval. I do think that this is going to be a higher level of service for the three towns, and I do think it's going to work very, very well. And there's very little risk for us participating in this because the service right now isn't great, and so it's either status quo is like the bar has been set, we don't have to trip over it.
Just another quick comment. Technically, this is a pilot program. This is not a permanent agreement by the PVTA. The intent is to find out how well it does for the seniors who are using it, how much money and effort and service improvement the PVTA gets in their paratransit by, if you will, pulling this service out. So we have every reason to believe it's going to be successful.
And Mark, I had a question about operating hours. Would it go from like 8 to 5, 8 to 6?
No, actually, I can tell you the hours are somewhat restricted, but but it's not that bad. I think it's like 9 to 3:30 or 9 to 4. So people who use it, for example, for doctor's appointments, will have to be aware that you can't make a doctor's appointment for 8 o'clock in the morning. You won't get there, but, all of these services have an operating window anyway. I mean, they tell you 9 o'clock, they're within 15 minutes either way, so.
Yeah, okay, great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, why didn't PBTA pony up and expand their services?
Well,
I mean, it's odd that you say they're going to do it, they're providing the vans and the towns are going to do it cheaper than they can do it. That seems to be a missing
PVTA
block.
has a contract. The PVTA is a management company.
Right.
They don't run the buses. The buses are run by a company called Holmes Transportation Company. And the numbers are that every time the PVTA calls somebody and you call the PVTA to run the dial-a-ride service, it costs the PVTA $26 and change. My comment was we should have people use Uber and the PVTA should reimburse them. They're just an inefficient intermunicipal transit authority, Richard, and this is a town system that can be run much, much less expensive.
That's a pilot project, we'll find out.
They're looking to be out of the business.
I mean, by law, they have no obligation to provide dial-a-ride services for seniors either. And so, if push came to shove, they'd say, look, we're going to run this as paratransit for people to meet our handicap accessibility requirements. But the dial-a-ride, it's kind of where the supplemental purpose overtook the primary purpose in terms of use. And so rather than, because the first proposal, we just got to eliminate dial-a-ride. And the community said, we don't want to do that. We've got a lot, especially in the town of Long Meadow, where we have one bus route that's likely to go to a half a bus route, if something isn't done. Our people who use buses, we have hundreds and hundreds of people a month who use dial-a-ride services. So for us, it's a better deal.
Yeah, okay. It just seems like there's still a missing link in there someplace. If it's not profitable, I mean, I just... makes you wonder why.
The PVTA in general isn't profitable.
Yeah.
It runs heavily on federal subsidies and state subsidies and local subsidies, and so you roll into that their paratransit service. It runs at a deficit, and so the dial-a-ride service runs as a deficit. So to say, well, why doesn't the PVTA run? The more routes they run, the more money they lose. I mean, you hate to say that because it's not really a losing proposition, but the more services they provide, the more it costs the municipal governments and federal governments and state governments to
Well, if you're saying
subsidize
it's
the service.
$26 per call, I mean, that's ridiculous.
I'm not controlling their costs. I'm just reporting what the numbers were. So.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor? All right, thank you. You want to give us an update on the long-range master plan report?
Sure. I'd like to welcome Richard back from the dead. And I don't know if your presence here means we can do the evaluation, get it over with.
No,
we shoot away our
No.
our consultant for
15 more minutes.
Yeah, we got plenty of things to do. We still have to talk about your town manager reports and subcommittee reports, so we're still got a tight schedule.
I just really the long-range plan report is in here just kind of as a FYI. We did the long-range plan. We did that survey. It was well. I think we got 800 or something. She says it in here, but we got 800 responses, over 800 responses. That's a lot for a community survey. It was detailed, a lot of questions, as you can see. And I had a planning student from Westfield State as a work study. And I thought that this would be a good project to work on, to kind of go through and condense the many, many pages of comments and answers into kind of like what were the largest number. And so not the majority opinion, just the largest percentage, or the, like if 33% said one thing and no more than 33% said any other one thing, then that was what was reported, was just the one that the most popular answer. And so I wanted to just kind of include this here in the summary so you have it in a distillable way. There's, I will say quite candidly that after we did the survey, we were engaged in the site selection processes for both the senior center and DPW, and some of the attitudes I heard in meetings belie some of the attitudes expressed in the survey. But I think this is going to be a useful tool for future, as long as we, for future strategic planning and community planning, to say, the community said this, what do you think? Do you still feel that way? And for our zoning bylaw, our zoning and general bylaw review committees to look at and say, well, here's what they said they wanted. Should we test this? I mean, like I said, I think there were, I give you a perfect example here. Would you support Long Meadow exploring the sale and/or redevelopment of selected town-owned properties? 51.78% support. Is that real? Is that support for real? I mean, based on what I heard after that at public meetings, I would tend to think community, it obviously the answer is it depends on what you're developing it as, quite
It's also not it's not 65 or 70% either.
Yeah.
It's 51 point something.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It was also interesting, they said the water tower property is the one that they wanted.
75% or 77%.
77.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that the people, when we had those meetings with the people when the water tower was under consideration.
Well, that was for DPW.
But
Yeah.
but again, I think what we've got here is a situation where, we've got a small, 800 is a great response, but out of 11,000 voters, it's less than 1%, and so the question.
10%.
What?
Less than 10%. 800.
Right, less than
Yeah.
10%, thank you, sorry. But I'm, from my perspective, I think that, we still have to find out what the specifics are for people. I just saw this thing as having issues. I mean, what's a statistically significant, result, or what's the error on, we don't have anything like that, so all we got are numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's not really worth that level of analysis, because it's not like we're making, final decisions. The people who make the final decisions are going to make the final decisions based on emotions, not statistical sampling data. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean, I think that these decisions are emotional decisions in many ways for town meeting. So I want to make, I'm not saying that's a negative. That we just had a conversation about town meeting and the swelling of town meetings, and we've all kind of observed that. I think in this case, the timing of when this was done and in the context in which it was done was very different than I think what we know about community attitudes towards land use and other things today. I mean, I think I'm not going to say we.
Yeah.
I look at the community's attitudes very differently than I did when we first did this.
So what's the next step?
Well, the next step is we have this here to digest, and we're going to be going through some community planning in the specific context of the senior center. We may resurrect the long-range plan update process. Like I said, I think when you're largely built out, there's not a lot of meaningful land use planning you can do.
Well, there's the water tower. 77% people said consider it. We're now looking at some increase in taxes. We need to expand our tax base, and we have some major projects that could use an infusion of money. Should we consider the development of the water tower?
I think that, to focus on.
Talk to the school committee.
Yeah.
The school committee said they'd be very happy, just they want to know what we're spending it, what we're going to be using it for. That's all they said. I think their big concern when the chair was talking about it is that we were going to put in a whole bunch of houses in there that were going to have a lot of kids in them, and that would increase their budget.
And if we did? If
Well-
that's what the town wanted to do, I mean,
Yeah, but I say we
who
take.
gets veto power, I guess is the.
Yeah, I say let's start the steps. Unless you see something else with the long-range plan we should be considering.
I think the bylaw stuff to me is compelling in terms of, being open to different types of housing.
You mean the accessory housing that we're talking
accessory
about?
accessory units and things like that. There's clearly an aversion to multifamily, but accessory dwelling units, things like that. I think those are things that our bylaw committee can look at and say, okay, well, here's something we can work with.
Well, I think that the Housing Authority came up with that accessory dwelling thing. The only problem is, according to that, all of us could have accessory housing, which would have been, everyone could become a two-family home.
I think that's
Yeah.
what the bylaw review committee wants to clarify. They want to make sure the bylaw reflects what people want, which people think is a supportable way to generate additional revenue for themselves and for the town. And kind of clean, because our bylaw right now says you can lease up to 4 bedrooms. I mean, it's not. So that's one issue. You know, like I said, I think it. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, now it's payback. So.
No, you had to aim it at Mark.
Yeah. So I think that, like I said, I don't want to say this is kind of landing with a thought. I mean, I want to follow through on the fact that we did the survey and that there was information contained in it. What to do with this information at this point, I'm not as certain.
Well, because the PowerPoint is really good. I mean, both documents you gave us about this were good, but the PowerPoint, is there any way we could just run this on LTC TV, the PowerPoint, and just see what people think of it? You know, just run it a couple of times.
I mean, I put it on the website. I think the PowerPoint it wouldn't have much context, meaning like someone giving the PowerPoint and saying, here's what this described.
I think we just, you don't need, I think if you just had this, you know how sometimes they just have like
A slideshow going by?
No, they have pretty basic stuff there. And if you just had the slideshow going with the music, you know, people would read each one and just take it, because it isn't like the whole thing ties together. It isn't, you know, it's not that kind of document like, oh, I missed the first 3 slides.
Yeah, no,
You know,
each thing stands alone. I think that's not a bad idea. I just want to make sure people don't get,
Yeah.
go, what does that mean?
Well, actually, if it gets them involved and it gets them calling, I think it's a good thing. And they say, well, what does this mean? You know, 70% of the people want to develop this property, or people think we should put a second story on commercial properties or an additional story. I think that might be, because again, the more people who participate, the better off we are.
Tom, I'd just like to comment that to some degree, I thought the slideshow had some slides that were misleading, and I seem to recall question 22 that it said 34% said no. But that means 68% said something other than no, and then all you do is show no. You know, it doesn't tell you the whole story. I mean, I'd love to see us put together and I agree with you, something that says, here's the question, and here are the answers. And all we're doing, you know, we're not skewing it, we're not doing, just, you know, the answers add up to 98 or 99% or whatever the number is. Because to put a question up there which says 34% no, you say, well, that means 68% said yes. And Stephen just said, well, no, it means the majority of the people said something other than no. But if you don't explain it, it certainly comes across as 68% or 66% said yes. And that's problematic in my opinion.
So,
but we also have the written statement. I mean, the student who did this did a nice job, and so you could have one statement, you know, the written statement, and then show the slideshow, and then at the end of it, show the written statement again, so people get a perspective. If they say, well, I don't understand how this all fits together, and they read the statement, you know, I don't know if television is the best medium for that, but I think people...
I mean, we can certainly put it on the website. I think I sent out the raw data, like the raw survey results last year.
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of information. The reason why I took her an entire semester to produce a fairly thin document was it was a lot of distillation and trying to find common themes and just trying to find a block to build off of out of the divergent commentary that was made. So... we can certainly post it on the website. I think, you know, maybe we could further develop the presentation to get to LCTV, or we could just do the data dump. But if we just ran the results of the full questions and answers, it would be longer than one of these meetings. I mean, it would be, it would run for a while.
Yeah.
So let's talk that out a little bit more.
But this one here is just 17 slides in a conclusion, something like that, right? What do you got? Yeah. Because then there was all the qualitative, you know, people wrote in their ideas, and there isn't really much of a, those are harder to process. But did she summarize some of that? I didn't see it as clearly.
That's the synthesis of it. So
Yeah.
when she says like 35% said X,
Yeah.
some people may have said it in various different ways, but she went through and kind of, there was some interpretation of it, but usually most of the thoughts were pretty consistent.
The other thing is to have a forum, sort of like Rebecca did on the DPW, where you have a forum, we talk about the master plan, and the discussion group is then videotaped. And then the slideshow is presented, so they see something other than just the slideshow.
Okay.
So that's something you could consider.
Yeah.
Maybe an upgrade to
All right. Because it is, I mean, she did a lot of, the student did a lot of work, and it's nice to stimulate some thinking about, where we're headed, and I think it's a good job.
I would like to see us have an action plan or some next steps that, well, what we're expecting to happen next and by what date. But that's something we can discuss at the next meeting.
Maybe in
long-range
the
plan.
context of a goals discussion?
In context of a goals discussion, but specifically to the master plan, whether we want to have these things reviewed by the bylaw or zoning to review this or come up by the fall town meeting.
Do you want to impanel another long-range planning committee?
I don't know if that will be our next step.
Can't believe what I'm saying. Let's do another
Committee or task force.
committee or task force.
Yes.
But no, I think you're right. Marie, there's 57 different ways we can go with this.
Yeah.
And so for me, and so when I say what to do with the information not clear, I don't think it's often that I don't have a specific idea of what I think should happen next in most subjects. Related to municipal administration here in Long Meadow. This is one where, because there are so many different directions we can go, and because each of those directions has some, more than some uncertainty, and you're gonna, you think you're doing one thing, and then someone finds out about it, gets mad, and all of a sudden you're doing an entirely different thing. I don't even know. Like, in my mind's eye, I don't know what to do with this next. Do I think we need to have a broader discussion about land use planning? I did when we started this. Do I feel like the two site selection processes we just went through were very specific discussions about the community's attitudes towards land use?
And very painful. Okay.
Yes, I do, and I think that, and I guess, and I'm really not being sarcastic. I mean, from a planner's perspective, the feedback we got at the volume, both in terms of the volume and in the number of people who weighed in on those, and it wasn't just about the two projects. It really wasn't. If you really recall all the feedback we got, it wasn't just about the two projects. It was about open space and other things, and that's where, because people were focused on it and people were engaged in it, we got much more intense and directive feedback from a much broader swath of the community about land use than we ever could from some day-long charrette that you get a couple hundred people, if you're lucky, to show up to.
Okay, so we'll kick this off to the next agenda, and we'll think about what we want as next steps. Do we want a task force, or do we as a select board want to establish some goals and just move the project forward?
Well, I just think what I would recommend is that the select board, in their goal-setting session, look at the long-range plan as something to establish a goal on.
So it relates to the other thing we have on the agenda.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for Stevens Town Manager reports, because we're now ready to go into executive session? So
I do have a couple of things that I want
yes,
to
okay,
announce.
quickly.
So, it wasn't on the agenda tonight, I apologize for that, but we do have we did meet with the neighbors on West and Dunn Roads, as we talked about in the last meeting about temporary closing. We did present the fire chief's ideas. They embraced them. They understood everything. We talked about the timeline. They understood that. And so the chief and DPW are in the kind of final stages of putting together a sketch and specs or whatever. And I did direct them to go ahead and place orders for what we think we need. I think there's broad consensus that something needs to be done. But we'll bring that back with a much more specific plan than what the chief showed you for a vote if the board wants it, or if the board just wants me to take action administratively, we can do that too.
And you're talking about the
basically
off the
cement
road.
blocks in a what he was calling a farm gate, like a 16-foot aluminum gate that is some posts and chains and things like that.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Of the track? Okay.
Yep.
That sounds like, is that like a semi-permanent closure?
No, it is a temporary closure, and all the parties who, I don't know if you were at the meeting, but when we had our meeting out in the field with the FRA and Amtrak and all those, Mass DOT, everyone acknowledged that's not a permanent condition, that's a temporary closure, and that the permanent condition, I haven't seen the diagnostic review yet, but I'm told by the people who wrote it that it recommends a fully controlled crossing. So that is they've already identified what they think the permanent solution should be. This is just an upgrade from sawhorses.
Because we have pedestrians and bikers and
right. It's not
ATMs
just vehicles.
and some
People that live down.
who are still
not
crossing.
Even people just bird watchers, from anywhere.
Stephen, there was a report in the media a week or so ago about and in fact, it was in the first front page of the newspaper about a report. Did the town get a copy of that report? They were reporting on a.
That's the report I just referenced.
Can we get a copy of that?
I'm working on it. It's at Mass DOT and the Federal Railroad Administration are reviewing it.
But how did the media get it?
They didn't get it.
They were quoting from it.
They were quoting from my reporting to the select board.
No. They were quoting from the report.
But this was not the report that Stephen's talking about.
Well,
it's some other report by just one agency.
Right.
We're waiting for the big report that's coming out.
I'm just wondering if I'd love to know what the media is reporting on, because I think
there's no
reporting
report.
on error.
There's no report that I have related to this that you guys have. Oh, the accident report. You're talking about the investigation report. I have not. I'm sure our police department has it. I have not seen a copy of it. So we may have it. I haven't seen it. I assume it's a full document.
I'll tell you why. Because I read in the paper it said the accident MP 57.2, and they said that means it was going 57.2 miles an hour, and I think MP means milepost, and not. It's not a speed. It didn't say MPH. It said MP, and I'm just wondering if the media's got everything wrong. And that's why
how long have you been reading the paper?
I was just saying, you're actually wondering about that, Mark?
But the problem is, people are reporting, are taking that as the final word, and that's why I'm saying if there's a report out there, I would think that the town should have gotten
the accident report I have not seen. I can certainly see if there's a copy available.
Yeah, if you could get that to us. But the article also mentioned that we're waiting by mid-June, and we're not even sure if we're going to get it by mid-June, this report that's between the two agencies.
That one I understand, but this was something that you saw.
It's the accident report. Yeah, I immediately was surprised.
The report that you're talking about is not the accident report, about having fully controlled automatic arms and all that. That's been decided that.
No.
It has not been decided. That's just a recommendation that I am told is going to be in the diagnostic review, but I have not seen that written. I take that back. I do have that in an email, that this is what the report is going to say.
But we haven't seen the report.
I have not seen the report.
Because the report's not, they're saying mid-June, but we're still waiting.
Yeah. So, and somewhat relatedly, and this is, I just got word about this a day or two ago. One of the things that and Senator Lesser has done is he offered an amendment that was approved by the Senate in the budget process to extend the same $300,000 death in the line of duty benefit that public safety receives to all municipal employees, which, it makes a lot of sense because I think because we are out in the public and are often interacting with people, and we don't know what their motivation is, what we're getting, or what their state of mind is. We are sometimes in dangerous situations. He hopes that the governor will approve it as a part of the budget, and it would go into effect March 10th, 2017, which would make Warren Coles eligible. It is funded through the pension programs. And so it is not a state annually budgeted thing.
That would come out of our Hampden County Retirement Board?
I believe so. It's funded by the pensions. And I think God willing, we go years without having to issue a benefit. All towns. I think I hope they never have to write a check, but I just want to thank the senator for looking out for the Coles family in that regard. So the solid waste disposal contract, you saw I gave you a bunch of documents there, and in the sake of time, we can talk about it later. You can email me questions, or Mark, you said some. An update on Westcom, I also had the district agreement in there. That's, town council is currently reviewing that. I asked them to get the comments back by the end of this week. The district planning committee did approve it. The context of it is it's really just a composite of all what we felt were the best practices in the existing regional communication centers in the state, all the recs that are currently in existence.
Do you need a vote on that next meeting?
I'll be presenting it for a vote at the next meeting.
You will? Okay.
To complete our grant application.
Okay.
And the state is asking us for it.
Okay.
And then the fire training will be happening on Long Meadow Street. It's a great opportunity for the fire department. I am talking to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission about helping us write a grant for the department, to DOER, Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs, for some analysis. We had talked about trying to look at rooftop solar, like doing a bid for the town facilities. This will hopefully help us put together that proposal. I will be out of the office at the end of this week. And I think that was it.
Any questions, Mark?
Yeah, I have a lot, and I'll tell you why. I'll start with Westcom, which is the regional rec program. But I guess I'm a little dismayed that next week or next select board meeting, that's being presented to us as it's a done deal, up or down vote, as opposed to saying, you got us into this with your vote, select board. Do you want any input into some of the discussions we've had so far? Because up till now, we've had none. And I'm not sure it's appropriate that we've had any up till now. But at some point, I think it is. This becomes I'll tell you, my concern is that this becomes a program that when you're in, you're in. It's a long-term deal. You can't change it, and it certainly is a big deal for the town. It's a major change for the town. I've supported regional communication systems from the get-go, but I saw a lot of things in that document that I certainly have a lot of questions about, and I'd hate to have to wait and get my questions answered when we got to prove it tonight because tomorrow we got to submit it to the state.
Well, I think
that's the sense I've gotten, Marie.
You've got 2 weeks now to
to what?
To ask your questions.
But I'm not. I think they need to be asked in public, to tell you the truth.
Should we have a special meeting then?
I don't know what we have to do, but I can ask questions, but it's one-on-one, and I think if I've got questions, people in town are going to have questions. And I say that with all due respect. I think there's a ton of work that's been done on it. But I read through that, Stephen, I got to tell you, I got 2 pages worth of questions because I just don't know. And I know that the people who worked on it are good people and well-intentioned people. They got a lot going for them. But once we sign this thing and we're in it, there's no getting out. I mean, it's very, very difficult. And I don't think we want to get out.
Right. So the point is, if there's work to be done and you need another meeting to do it in, we just can't do it tonight.
I understand that, but the point is
that
this is the first time we've really seen it in place, and that's my comment on Westcom. And my comment on the DOER grant, is working on rooftop solar projects the highest priority of the town. I don't see the reason we're committing resources to the project, given many of the uncertainties of the program, the physical impact on our structures, certainly the lack of our ability as the town to use the solar power that we purchased, because we've gone out and made power purchase agreements that we already commit to the town. And I guess the question is, it's great, it sounds good in theory. I'm very much for solar power, but I don't see the economics of this in the big picture of the town. What are we going to get from this kind of thing? And if the answer is, well, we got to go out there with an RFP or RFQ to find out what the value is for us, maybe we ought to do some homework. And I think that's my concern of saying, are we looking at something that benefits the town $5,000 or something that benefits the town $105,000?
Well, I think $5,000 is a value as well as $105,000.
But we got a lot of other projects,
Can I
Marie.
answer for myself?
We have a lot of other projects.
It is
that
the
would-
town manager's report. Can I just answer for myself, please?
But I just like to say that, again, I'm saying this is it the most valuable thing for us to be working on, for you, for the town resources to be working on, when we've got a list of things that we're told, we don't have resources for this, we don't have resources for that, we need an assistant town manager because you're busy doing a bunch of other things. Ultimately, we got to prioritize and work on the things that are most beneficial. So.
But I mean, I prioritize my workday, and I think I hear what you're saying. To some extent, I think you're creating thought linkages that aren't necessarily causal. 2 emails and a half-hour meeting with a person from the PVPC to start a grant process to do the homework is a much better bargain than me surfing the internet trying to find it out, spending hours on the internet, or delegating it to existing staff. You are in favor of solar. In fact, you specifically were in favor of community-based solar. That's what this is geared towards.
And it was a goal we actually voted on.
Right. We started the process we got a copy of an RFP from another town. It was clear reading it that we didn't have the baseline information to issue it, and we don't really have the time, energy, resources to gather that baseline information. Here comes this grant, falls out of the sky. This could help us get that done. It's not a great time commitment on our end. And so when it comes time to the annual evaluation or the goals, what did you do to increase revenue? What did you do to expand tax base? What did you do this? Well, these are all examples of that. And the other thing I'll say about Westcom is the grant application went in May 15th. The select board got a copy shortly thereafter. Attached to that was, by and large, the same district agreement that was in the packet on Friday. I have been reporting on this almost every meeting, or at least every month, since I started working on it. You can ask me questions offline, and then we can have the discussion about our Q&A at a meeting. So I understand completely that there are questions and concerns. I reject completely the idea that you haven't had the opportunity to talk to me about it. And it is a big deal. It is a big change. But it's been one that we've, as you noted, a lot of work and a lot of thought has gone into by the people who know the most about it, which, to be honest with you, isn't me. It's our police chief and our fire chief and our IT department. But I just want to be clear, for the board's sake, that that's why I've been putting these documents in the packets ahead of time before nights we vote on it, because I know what a big deal it is. I know how big the documents are. And it took me a long time to get through that, and I work on it daily. And in terms of just a general comment of prioritization, we do prioritization is like the expanding and contracting town meeting that John Fitzgerald was referencing. The priorities expand and contract depending on what's happening in that given moment, and what other work is ongoing. For example, a priority is figuring out this rail crossing. How did that priority come to be? Through tragedy. But that has rearranged a lot of other things. So some things that were priorities aren't priorities now because something happens. And I think we do a reasonably good job juggling everything. And that's why when there's something that and there are things that I let drop off that aren't priorities, and this is probably a discussion for the evaluation, but specifically with the case of the solar thing, the reason why it's in here, the reason why I'm doing it, is because it means we can learn something that we don't know today without having to do a lot of work to learn it. And I did forget to mention the fire chief. I don't know if you saw the memo of the fire chief on the grant. That's a huge win for the town that he fought for that.
Yeah.
So the Westcom thing, send me the questions. I can get you direct answers, and we'll have the consultant team here. You can grill them to your satisfaction. And again, I think it's good you have questions. I think it's good you read the stuff. But I think challenging me on the notion that I haven't given the opportunity to comment on it is not, I don't really agree with that.
Okay, anything else on the town manager reports for tonight?
I'd just like to make a comment about the waste disposal contract. Did we have a evaluation from our town council on that, and it was written contract?
We went back and forth quite a bit, and this is one of those things where it's another big deal, big cost.
It's a very big, big cost.
Yeah.
Big cost increase.
Yeah.
The only way we get through this stuff, quite honestly, is because Arlene stays involved in it, and we work as a coalition with the surrounding communities. This is something I also have reported on several times in the past about the status of negotiations. Now, when you're negotiating with someone, there's a limit to why negotiations are protected by executive session. But as I reported in the past, we went to really the edge of almost not having an agreement in place for July 1st, pushing to get the best possible deal we could for the town. But the market conditions right now on pricing are overwhelming. And we talk about what's priority, dropped a lot of things to spend hours researching why are the prices so high, what's going on, and calling, and negotiating, playing vendors off each other. Even that game, which, I don't love it, but it's exempt from Chapter 30B. I suspect that they're probably doing it, they're playing other towns off each other, so, all's fair in love and war here, but having Arlene still continue to manage the process, who's, she knows more about this than everybody else in the room combined, is really what helps us get through these contracts in a reasonable way, where I can recommend or I can sign a contract with confidence, knowing that it was the best possible deal we could get at the time, even though it is, it's embarrassing how much it's gone up, but I understand now why it is.
Okay, any other questions? No. Looking for a motion to go into executive session for negotiation and litigation, not to return.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Yep.
Okay, roll call.
Mark?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back on the 19th, but be sure to get out and vote on June 13th. We have numerous offices as well as a ballot question. Thank you.